members, town manager. Before you have several reports. We have the DFA quarterly report. By DFA regulations, we need to bring this to the council with a resolution. You have that information, the actual resolution attached. I also have the June final report, the condensed report that I usually bring on a monthly basis, but between May and June, that report, we're trying to catch up with the budget and get everything done. So you have that final report, and then just an internal report from the finance department with all the same information, just in different formats. So to go over the DFA report, really it's just a summary of all expenditures and revenues and our cash balance through the end of June 30th, 2014, after recording all receivable and payables and all expenses. So I don't know if you have that report first. It's just a landscape, a summary. Our revenues this year equal $24,121,000, and our expenditures was equal to $23,314,000. You can see a beginning cash balance of $10 million, and our ending cash balance through June 30th is $15,426,34. So the DFA report just shows all of the funds that we have within the town. And if you want me to go to maybe the June, our condensed report that more focuses on general fund, or if you have a question on the DFA report, I'll answer that. I guess not. So the next one that you have is the June financial report. And this is our condensed one that, again, I'll start bringing on a monthly basis now, starting July. It's the second meeting of each month. Through June, we ended up with 4.23% over last year, and we had projected a 4%. So we came slightly above the 4% that we did project. June's gross receipts were actually up 6.6%. Some of the classifications increased were construction and retail trade, and some of the categorical decreases were accommodation and food services and information. And just looking back at the previous classification reports, that accommodation and food services has been down probably 3 to 4 months already consistently, which is not a good sign, but just a note. On the expenditures for general fund, well, actually, on the revenues just for general fund alone was $10,831,000, and last year we brought in $10,251,000. So just a little comparison from year to year on actual general fund revenues. Final expenditures were $9,776,019 between all 18 departments that we have in general fund. We did have projections through March by all departments, and ending up at the end of the year, they were about 2% off. So that equates to roughly about $224,000. That's why when we look at the final budget figures, you'll see that ending balance increase by not exactly that amount, but roughly 200. Pretty much the ending balance is quite high, but you'll see going into the new budget, we're using $618,000 of that for one-time costs, either for community grants or one-time cost budget that we brought to you. And you can see on the capital projects, 21% completion between all of our capital funds. And just debt service payments all made on time within the covenants. So that's just a summary of a condensed report, and I think you have the other financial report that we do internally that pretty much matches our budget format.
Councilman Peralta?
Thank you, Maria. Appreciate it. I just have one quick question for you on the carryover. If we were to be exactly at 2/12, is that the 600,000, or is it a little bit more than that with the carryover?
It'd be a little bit more just on general fund carryover. It'd be roughly 840,000, because it's really 1/12 of your general fund expenditures. So if they came down, well, then it would be less.
So there's a potential there for another $200,000 to fix up the town.
Yes.
And still keeping 2/12.
Yes. And still keeping 2/12.
Thank you.
So that's that agenda item with actually actually, the DFA report is what I submitted, but these are a little bit more our internal reports so that you can follow through. So I stand for any other questions?
I have a question. It's a little off of this, but I'm going to bring it up here because we have a council meeting. I was wondering if maybe at the next town council meeting, if you have any figures yet of the GRT around pre-farmers market versus now that the farmers market's been on the plaza for the merchants, if that's possible.
It probably won't make a difference because it's all within the city limits, and I don't know how the farmers markets report well, hopefully they report it in the sales of them, so it really probably wouldn't make any difference because it's within the town.
It's actually not the farmers market, but it's, you know, the increased sales from the businesses that are, you know, supporting it, so just curious.
I can look at the classifications. It's just on the GRT reporting, we don't know individual businesses. They come in as a group. So if it's retail trade, it's all the people that classify under retail trade. So we can look at the groups and see if there's any difference from that time to this time.
Well, and maybe I think what Councilmember Cantu is looking for is maybe a differentiation between last year this time with having the farmers market at City Hall, and then whether or not there was increases or declines because of its. That's what the most pretentious issue has been with us about whether or not businesses are actually losing money or they're actually increasing revenues. So
we started this, just now in July at the plaza?
no,
June? Okay, so June. I'm just trying to think.
So if we have a month lag of June,
It's
we
2
won't
months
see it
lag.
until August. September?
September. We won't see it until September's receipts. But at that time, I mean, definitely do that.
So maybe you would just email, I know I would like it, but email me what last year's June looked like, and then once we complete in August, we can look at
Okay.
this year's.
Thank you.
And then one thing to consider too is food is not taxable, so.
Right. Well, portions of it.
A portion of it, yeah.
Restaurant.
Yeah, restaurant is, but, yeah. So actual sales of food and vegetables on the plaza wouldn't be taxable.
So I think,
But everybody's
Yeah.
increasing sales would be.
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
So that's.
Any other questions on the resolution 1435? If not, resolution to the council.
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve. And a second. Further discussion? None. Call for the vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And I just want to welcome our new attorney, Susan Baker, back to the room. If you would just thank you for being here. Thank you. So we'll go on to resolution 1436, budget adjustment request. Marietta?
So all of these items are our final numbers. Once we get everything together, we put together what funds were either short or over or needed any kind of budget adjustments. Anything that goes from category to category, which means our personnel, operating, capital needs to come to council, any increase in transfers or the sort. So you have I just put a little summary together. In general fund, really the adjustments that we made were the transfer in from our state share gross receipts tax. On the books, we received $200,000, $941. And one thing that we did to increase the budget line was $13,000 to cover any final expenditures in the severance pay fund. So between all of our 18 departments, we only had 4 departments that had some budget adjustments, mainly moving from personnel to operating to cover some of those. State shared is just the $200,000 that we needed to increase and transfer out. Same with the gas tax, we had additional monies, so that increased the transfer out and the revenue. The recreation fund, we increased the transfer in approximately $4,800 from the community grants fund, which was where the programs used to lie, and now that we only have the recreation fund, we move those to consolidate them. Rogers Tax Promotional Fund actually went over, not the fund itself, but the marketing budget by $10,803. So So we just took that from the reserve in that fund. Community grants was just that 4,800 moving to recreation. Gas tax received more money, 3,900. Same with the GRT capital, 18,333. That goes into our regular capital fund. And water and sewer just cover a small amount of debt service. The regional landfill, the same thing. The final debt service on that fund 88, $1,300. And then increasing the severance pay fund of $13,000. And have the summary and then the actual resolution with all the information on it. And I stand for questions.
Council, any questions? Resolution 1436, budget adjustment request.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, call for the vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
So we'll go on to item D, approval of final budget for 2014-15. Marietta?
So June 24th, we had our actual resolution for the final budget, and I said I would come back if there was any major changes from that budget, just to incorporate those. So that's what it is. I didn't put another full 94-page budget. Once it's all completed after these changes, I will send it out to you. So really the changes, I just put the little presentation that we had before. The revenue sources before was $62,284,016. Right now, final budget numbers are $63,625,328. So those are the final revenue sources. Just changed slightly, and it was mainly the carryover and the state share taxes and the grants. On the expenditures, on June 24th, we had $54,794,237. No, I lied. I don't lie. I just said that wrong. We had $54,735,417. Finance director is not right. Final budget expenditures are $54,794,237. So if you see, you go to the major changes in the budget. Like I said, we did have an additional reserve increase by $113,000 to $988,165. That's equal to about 34 days, an additional 34 days. The revised comp plan, which will be presented later on, just an estimate of $105,215 in wages and $27,145 in fringe benefits, for a total cost of $132,360. The fire protection fund, since we're already in July and we already have that money, we know that we received $9,539 more than what the budget had, so we're just increasing that, and also adjusting their budget to $506,514. They spent a little more, so the carryover was a little less, so we just even people it out. And just stop me if you have any questions.
Councilor Peralta?
Marietta, thank you. Just a quick one on the airport. You budgeted the $24 million,
Yes.
but since it's going to be two-phased,
We actually,
shouldn't it be after that? It's the second phase, probably won't happen this fiscal year, since we probably won't go to bid on this until
So-
November.
I actually budgeted for the full project, because when we did do the budget, we did at that time, phase 1 and 2 was supposed to be done all this fiscal year. So we have it in there. I said we keep it that way so that if it rolls into next year, we already have those funds covered. So that's how it's budgeted right now, phase 1 and 2.
Thank you.
Community grants, after all and said was done, we actually allocated this money as a one-time cost. And I have $81,250 in the budget, and I think we have something else on the agenda for that. So that's $75,000 for the full year and one payment that was lagging between fiscal years. So I And then we also increased the transfer in to cover that cost. And I didn't have a revenue for a CED grant that is in the works. I think we need to check all our planning grants out and make sure we're both on the same page with revenue. So we've spent some and we need to receive it. Law Enforcement Protection Fund, they didn't spend as much as they said they were going to do, so we had to add a carryover of $700 to $800, and they're going to use that for online training and firearm purchases. They need to spend that because they can't carry that over again next year. Capital Projects Fund adjusted to the total budget of $29,597,754, and that was based on actual carryover amounts from all of the projects. Our Enterprise Fund, I had scheduled to transfer out $941,404, and that's for all the capital GRT that we received. And it just, at the end of the year, I didn't get that big amount transferred right, so that increases, and we're going to be doing that in the next month. That's for all the construction projects, which are sort of hopefully getting started this year. And Water Enterprise Fund and Wastewater Enterprise Fund, we need to increase the contractual services for inspection services. I missed those two in the original process when we moved the project manager position to contractual services. And those are the major changes. I attached just the recap from June 24th to the current one. The current one has all highlighted yellow things. I didn't highlight all the ending balances because then you'd be seeing too much yellow. But that is the final budget recap that we will submit by Friday, or no, Thursday, 31st. And I stand for any questions.
Council?
Move for approval.
Approval of the final budget 2014-2015. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Falta?
Yes.
Councilmember Hahn?
Yes.
Councilmember Cutchin?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to thank Marietta and her staff, particularly Marietta, because she doesn't have much staff. And she was even more short-handed towards the end here for an excellent job juggling, getting all this done while working with us on the comp plan and 3 or 4 other projects at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Maria.
And don't come in on Sunday this week.
We'll do much better next year. Just, yeah, push me on.
You have your golf clubs ready for the end of the month? Good.
Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
And your staff.
And you will get a final pre-budget with all of these final numbers probably next week. Via email, if you want to order a copy, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, Council, I know we recommended about amending the agenda. If we could move items 7, C, and D up to the present. If that's the wishes.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Falta?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Cutchin?
Yes.
Councilmember Hahn?
Yes.
So we'll go down to Town Manager's Report, Echo Park locker rooms, update on the process of the Echo Park locker rooms. Mr. Bellis?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to defer to Councilman Hahn, who is in attendance at a meeting between myself and the members of the Taos Sports Alliance in regards to this subject.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Bellis, and Mr. Yarovitz is in the audience. So, Mark, I don't know if you had heard this earlier, but we had moved you up to try and fit your schedule. Let me just tell you in my blue-collar language what I see going on. Mr. Yarovitz and Bellis, who are also in that meeting, can amend whatever I've said. Basically, the $300,000+ that are still sitting in the Eco Parks funds will be used to contract with Wayne to draw up final plans to make a presentation to the council for approval so that those funds can then be dispersed to build the locker rooms and training rooms out at the Eco Park. There is a timeliness concern here that we need to try and move on this project before winter cold really starts setting in. An additional variable in this is the fact that a number of our college teams, and it's just a small group, I don't want to mislead the public, are committed to using the park next spring if we have completed this training room and lockers. Additionally, and perhaps not directly related to this discussion, is the fact that at some point, Mr. Bellis, and correct me if I'm wrong, we'd be reaching out to the schools to see if the schools would be willing to take the Eco Park under its domain. But those discussions and the fact that I'm bringing it up now is just very premature. That being said, we kind of have a bifurcated approach here. There's a need to complete the locker rooms on the one hand, and on the other hand, there's a need to talk to the schools about perhaps taking the Eco Park over. That latter, again, is very premature. Mr. Bellis, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Just to clarify that that would be a council decision in regards to transferring an asset of the county.
Right. Mr. Arians, thank you for your tenacious involvement with this. And Peter, thank you.
Peter, Mark? Just have to pull it towards you because otherwise it won't get close.
You asked me to review where we are up to this point with the locker room status. Would that be correct?
Briefly.
Okay. We've agreed that the most expeditious way to do this would be using the CES contract mechanism. We have contacted and spoke with Wayne Rutherford, who is the only contractor in town approved under CES. In addition, he's CES provider to the school district also. Looking at the budget and what we have available, and the recommendations from Wayne with previous conversations, the idea was to go to a modular approach to a locker room, just a square box. We can get more dollar value out of that process. Where we sit today is we just reviewed at that meeting the contract that Wayne offered to the town so he could go on, be contracted by the town to proceed with this. He would then take our scale drawing and redesign the internal usage of the space. We have several different inputs from coaches and other people involved with the locker rooms. We'd like to do one more final layout of the locker room. We've scaled it up, we've scaled it down. I think we're back down to a smaller locker room, just under 1,500 square feet. We've agreed would be sufficient. We didn't want to go to the full, almost 2,000 square feet because of budget constraints. We feel that that would be more than adequate to fulfill the needs for the college teams that are simply asking for dressing rooms instead of using the bus to change the clothes on. We will include bathroom and shower facility in these locker rooms, but we don't need anything elaborate to make them happy. So Wayne will, Mr. Rutherford will redo the floor plan with us on his CAD machine. As soon as he gets signed in by the town, we were delayed by the town going through its approval to become a user under the CES guidelines. I know that has been completed, and now we just have to get Mr. Rutherford's contract signed up, and he can give us the final design that we give him the input on, and get the final pricing. And if all goes well, we can place the order for delivery, hopefully sometime in October. We can get the whole thing installed and put together. That's what we're shooting for now.
In addition to that, the locker rooms, there's also will be a referee changing room and a training room area for that'll be multi-use in the sense of not just team by team, but if someone's injured, it'll be easy access for them vehicles getting to and from. The plan now is to have that in the existing building, just redesign part of the maintenance area.
Right, we're going to take some of the existing building there that has the large storage space and make it more efficient because it is not used to its full capacity. We'll take a portion of that and make that the training room in addition to the locker room we're doing. So we'll have about 2,000 square feet of usable space when we're done. Questions?
So Mark, 1,500 square feet is total, it's not 1,500 for one team, 1,500 for the...
No, it's
Correct.
Okay, I just,
we
They
work-
like it, but.
We work with Mr. Greer at the Youth and Family Center, and the square footages he's had for his hockey teams with their equipment, which is another magnitude of equipment usage compared to soccer, if you can imagine, well, they need, and they've had much smaller spaces, and he assisted with us on the design to make sure we had enough space, and he feels we're more than adequate.
Councilman Peralta?
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, how much is the contract for Wayne?
The Wayne Rutherford contract, as it was submitted to Mr. Bellis, I believe was an up to an amount of $22,000, including design, utility work. I don't have it in front of me. It was just presented to him, and I didn't review it. Perhaps he could correct me on those numbers.
And this is a contract directly to Wayne Rutherford?
It'll be a contract with him directly, so he can hire anybody and do anything he wants. We will be using a CES building system company that is approved by CES also, but that I don't believe is required, but we're going that route anyway.
Does Mr. Rutherford have an architectural license?
It really isn't needed. The building company has their own stamping capacity in New Mexico for this. So they've done enough of these in New Mexico and other states where they don't have all the
You're
designs.
talking about contracting with Mr. Rutherford, not CES.
But we'll be using them as a CES. They're also licensed under CES. So their in-house stamping will be sufficient for the building. I don't believe we need an architect, but you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm trying to fit this thing into the procurement bill.
Right. Marietta was at our meeting also, and I hope that she gave us a blessing.
If I might clarify that, Councilman, the entity, we're going through CES, and the entity we're going through is that Wayne Rutherford is identified as a project manager and general contractor for CES. So in fact, our contract is with Mr. Rutherford, even though he's just passed through to one of the three companies we will choose as the modular provider.
Can we do that?
Yes.
I mean, my understanding is CES is the one that has the exemption from the procurement code, but Wayne Rutherford doesn't. So how can we contract with Wayne Rutherford? We should be contracting with CES, and then they subcontract to Wayne Rutherford.
We do.
To meet the requirements of the procurement code. Am I not right?
Mr. Mayor and Councilman Peralta, you're exactly right. What happens is we enter into a three-party contract between the town, Wayne Rutherford, and CES. CES has, in the theory of these cooperative purchasing agreements, already gone through the competitive bidding associated with the procurement requirements. And that's in fact what CES specializes in, is procuring those service contracts and then passing those procurements on to its member entities, which the town is now one of.
I want to make sure that I understand it right.
You're right.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What's the total cost of this modular that they want to put as a locker room?
I don't have a final set of numbers yet, but the first bid, the first cost without the additional infrastructure. Now, the building's going adjacent to our existing building, so the meeting with Mr. Kennebec, we looked at the utility hookups for extending the sewer and water, et cetera. I don't have an exact number from that yet. That will be coming from Wayne. But the first draft of a bid that I had from the contractor doing the modular building was right at $100,000 for 1,440 square feet delivered. Now, Mr. Rutherford and utilities, I'm hoping that the whole thing can come in for about $175,000. I don't have any exact numbers on that, and it's going to probably be higher because I don't count things like additional insurance or whatever else is covered under some of these expenses. So I don't have a waiting. Mr. Rutherford was going to work on it for us and get us a full set of detailed numbers. after he got signed in on his contract with the town.
Oh, that's a lot for a modular. And is there any kind of a figure on what an actual building?
If this is about $68 a square foot delivered. A regular building, from what we understand, is probably $168 to $200 a square foot. That's the numbers we're getting. We would prefer to build it by a contractor who bid it out in town and did it by 2x6 one at a time, but those numbers don't work in any of our budgets. I'd be happy to go that route, but I'm trying to be frugal here. Do you have a concern about the modular or the price of the modular?
Well, the upgrades, I mean, in the end.
Sorry, what?
Any upgrades? I'm real familiar with the dressing rooms at the swimming pool because I take my grandkids all the time and I see where it just falls short horribly.
Well,
And so
yes.
a modular, you know, and all the necessary changes is just going to add up.
Well, modular is 2x6 also. The difference is the finish work on the inside. If you want to make it more bulletproof from the kids having too much fun in public, some of those things can be addressed. We haven't gotten to that point. If there could be an additional.
Yeah, there'll be an additional expense for that because that is one of the considerations that it is. It's going to have some hardware, and we want to make sure from the flooring to the walls that it's going to stand up a little more rugged, for a lot more ruggedness than most modulars will experience.
Are they building it for New Mexico standards, or it's my understanding this is coming from Texas?
Yeah, it has to fall under New Mexico standards.
It's all under IDC now. There isn't anything you can't do to follow the current code. I mean, it's still 2x6. I mean, modular, it shouldn't be given such a bad reputation because it's glued and nailed for the most part, whereas stick-built is just nailed because it has to be transported. So it has to be a lot stronger during the transportation. Your old version of what you think of as a manufactured housing has come a long way in the last many years. So we discussed it with lots of people, but you know, we only have so much money to spend, and we need something simple, not something elaborate.
I just thought there's a Spanish saying where when you're cheap, you end up paying twice. So that's
Well,
fine.
It's in other languages too.
It's in all languages. You get what you pay for. Well, you know, if you want to change the budget and work with us on something else, we're at the mercy of the court. We're just trying to get some locker rooms built the most expeditious way.
I'm just trying to ask the questions I need to ask.
No, what you're suggesting is we do an upgrade on the inside of the building, floors and walls, etc. Make sure that the towel rack doesn't come off with the first pull, what you're referring to. Those are all included with what we want to cover with Wayne as we submit a final design to the modular company. We haven't done so yet.
Thank you.
All right, so this was more of a informational item than anything. I guess a contract will be coming back to us hopefully in the very near future. You know, our building season, as you both know, ends middle of November, December. You know, when we can pour concrete and we start freezing up. I'm sure we can pour beyond that, but we want to make sure that by then it's in place.
Thank you for bringing it up. What we hope to do is once we place the order for the modular, we can begin all of the infrastructure work while we're waiting in line to get it shipped to us. So Mr. Kennebec and I discussed doing the utility work and any foundation work while we're well in advance of the arrival of the unit. So we'll take that into consideration, yes.
Anything else from council? Thank you both for
We'll sit up here
enlightening us.
for D if you don't mind.
What was that?
We'll sit up here for the next item if you don't
Oh,
mind.
okay. So,
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. So we'll go on to item D, Taos Sports Alliance, discussion and direction from council in regards to the amended contract TT 1349 with Taos Sports Alliance in the amount of $75,000, inclusive of grocery tax for the management of the promotion of the Taos Eco Park. Mr. Bells?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to defer to legal counsel on this. Both counsel and myself wanted to come back and just clarify a few points on this contract, as particularly with the council members that have been here when this was put together, so that we're accurately reading this. Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Bellis, Mayor and council members. I'm not sure what kind of summary you want from me. I didn't really prepare anything. In conversations with Mr. Bellis, particularly in the context of this discussion about the locker rooms and the placeholder for this amount of money in the recurring budget, I think we felt the need to bring this contract to your attention, make sure particularly the mayor and the new members of the council were familiar with its terms for purposes of going forward. And generally, I guess what I mean by that is that this is a contract that auto renews for additional periods of 1 year each for the next 6 years. And that auto renewal provision is subject to termination only by giving notice 120 days prior to the auto renewal. Now, I'm not sure how meaningful that provision is because there's a general termination provision that allows for termination at any time by giving 120 days notice. I don't understand there to be any intent to terminate or to in any meaningful way change the relationship with the Taos Sports Alliance at this point. But as has been observed in other contracts that have that type of provision that requires advance notice, we thought it was important to bring it to the council's attention. We're also incidentally, in a much broader context, establishing a system of contract monitoring that would trigger a sort of, or flag these contracts as these notification requirements arise in advance so that we don't get stuck, as we've discussed, in the context of other contracts with no ability to renegotiate or to terminate. So, Mr. Bellis, I'll look to you for any additional clarification that you want me to provide, but that's the gist of the term of this contract. Now, actually, let me add one other thing. This contract has an interesting provision in it. It's a contract that provides that the town will pay $75,000 per year for TSA to perform their scope of services. There's some direction in the contract. There's a provision that says the contractor, that being TSA, is directed to become self-sustaining or self-funding by the end of the fiscal year that just ended. There aren't any contractual ramifications to their not becoming self-funding, but I presume it's something that this council will want to revisit on an annual basis, and when you do revisit it, you should be aware of these auto renewal and opportunities to terminate provisions.
Thank you, Mr. Colwell, and for benefit council, that was actually a point that I felt that there was an obligation on our part since the prior council had directed that self-sufficiency, and certainly I think you've been aware by the presentations that that was unlikely to happen, but still, since it was a condition of the contract that before we let it automatically renew, that we brought it to the council's attention, and if there was any additional direction to the staff or the Sports Alliance in that regards, they would give you the opportunity and ample notice to do that.
Under the deliverables, Mark and Peter, I noticed, there's some dates and things that you guys are able to do. I know we've been here for a few months, and I just, talk about those deliverables a little bit if you would like to.
Okay. Not in any particular order, but the relation to all the different youth soccer leagues from 3-year-olds on up, all of those are in place in town. The high school soccer teams are playing there and training there. The NCAA events next spring are predicated on their return. That's where the locker room falls into place, because they said without a locker room we can't continue to return. It's just, as much as the Lobos and some other teams that like coming here to play, something that they feel strongly about and written some letters to us in that regard as well. We continue trying to get the NCAA teams to come and do some either spring or fall training. At this point, with one field, having a professional team come down and do some training, I think that's much more on a back burner. And I'm just trying to recall all of the like 7 or 8 things that are on that whole list, or 9 things. We'll be doing the referee clinic, trying to get more young people certified for refereeing, and adults.
Many of our deliverables are, what we're doing are outside the scope of the contract as well, but from the contract perspective, it's mostly about the field development and generating activity around the field and other things.
And, you know, and one of the, you know, the top 3, you know, do each year of contract. You know, we haven't been here, there's 3 of us that haven't been there too long, so we haven't seen any of that. I don't know if it, you know, if it's coming or we missed the first part of it, and now we're getting into the second quarter and some of those quarterly reports and that type of stuff.
Yeah, there's been a report monthly that has gone to, I believe, the council, referencing the executive director's brief report. Last fall, we did have a meeting and a recap of.
Mr. Mayor, if we could, real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt. With regards to that executive director's report, where does that go?
I believe that's gone to Mr. Bellis or the.
And through Mr. Brian Greer also handles our contract on behalf of the town.
Is there a reason why council hasn't seen that? Because I haven't seen one in a while.
In fact, before he answers the question, we have been delivering a monthly report going back 3 years or so now that for some reason or the other made it to the executive offices but never dispersed for the last 3 years. Sometimes as thick as a phone book of information that was held up by the previous town manager and never delivered.
Well, and you know, I haven't seen anything even since, I mean, we've engaged in this new portion of this new administration. Still haven't seen it, and that concerns me. Mark, and not to judgment to you, because I believe that you guys are doing what the contract's asking, but if we're not getting the information, it doesn't sit well with me moving forward and saying, well, the deliverables aren't being met, then why do we keep funding? You know, and I want to keep funding because I want to see the success of that eco park. You know exactly where I stand with it, but need those reports.
I would ask the same question, where are they going after we hand them off?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, under the deliverables, it says there shall be a quarterly report to the Town of Taos Council during the citizens forum or the regular agenda, which means that the Sports Alliance is supposed to come before the council and make a presentation as to where you are and what you're doing. And I agree, you have your monthly report that tells Brian what the expenditures have been, but we're not getting an idea as to, you know, what's happening with the alliance as far as moving forward with the discussions that we have concerning how do we move this thing forward and are we making progress. Those are the things that we've asked for and we're not seeing. And I'm just pointing it out because you know that I've been critical of this contract and trying to get it reduced because I haven't seen the deliverables happen. So I'm just looking at it this way and saying, here we are for another $75,000 and yet we don't seem to be getting off of the dime. And the other question I have, Mr. Mayor, if I could, is who are the officers of the Taos Sports Alliance now? I'm assuming that there's changes that have been made naturally because it happens with every organization. And that would be something that would come in at the end of the year because, for example, this contract or extension was signed by Justin Lee as president. Is he still the president or somebody else?
No, we currently have a vice president that happens to be me. Hank Friedman is the treasurer. The secretary is rotating because everyone does not like taking notes, so we rotate that one. We haven't fulfilled, we don't have a president at the moment.
We have a new executive director.
Is that the same one we had last year?
No. We have a new person. She came in, Kat Legere came on board or is that, I want to say, the last 60 days or 90 days.
We will bring you an update and get you copies of things that you may have not seen in the last several months. We'll get that to you right away.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, it appears to me that there's been a sort of a directive to provide the monthly reports to the council. Does the entire council share that request? Because I think that could be pretty easily facilitated between the manager and Brian.
Yes.
Yes.
And electronically, would that be preferable? Scan it and email it? Mark and Pete, can you provide it electronically
Yes.
going forward? Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
So, anything else from council? If not, what's the wishes? We're talking about amended contract TT 1349. Council?
Mr. Mayor, just one additional question prior to motion on this. What's the schedule looking like at the Eco Park? I guess right around now, right before school ramps up, and what's the usage?
I don't understand your question. What's the schedule like?
Well, what's being booked there currently? What organizations using it? What's coming into now that school starts?
Well, the various soccer, local soccer programs are there. Both the girls and boys soccer, high school soccer teams will be playing matches there. And then there's some adult, I call them pickup leagues, but evening activities and weekend activities where the adult pickup games will occur.
The one thing I'd like to see is just because I've got a call from the Taos Youth Football League. They're one organization that's never been able to use that field, whether it's because they haven't requested it or not. But I'd still like to see more preference given the youth above the adults. So if there's any time they were squeezing in, I'd ask that you reach out to them and just extend that hand to them. Because
We've never had, they have never contacted us.
Do they play with cleats or without cleats?
right now they play with turf cleats because they play on a high school field.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
No, they have never requested anything, so a direct call to us would be helpful. If I just might, under D, the point that I think was being made here was to clarify the contract and how we were set up, where it's renewed every year by you. It's not, if the renewal is approved, then the contract is automatically renewed. If you're not renewing our contract each successive year, then we're finished. But it's not an automatic renewal of the contract. It's, if you approve it in your budget each year, then the contract is automatically stay in place. You don't have to redo the contract. So just wanted to clarify why it was put on the agenda so you understand that it was about how the mechanism worked. In other words, if you approve it in the budget, then we don't have to renegotiate a contract each year. That's not correct? That's what we were led to believe. So maybe you can clarify it for me differently then.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I think Mark's explaining it just slightly wrong. I would characterize this as an auto renewal contract. There is a provision that states that the town will every year revisit this as a budgetary matter, but that's, in my opinion, a separate track of decision making for the town than the renewal of the contract. My interpretation of the contract is that in order to not renew it, the town would need to give 120 days notice in advance of its decision or its election not to renew. So it is an auto renewal contract. I think it's fairly clear that it is an auto renewal contract. I think, though, the way it was viewed this year is that it was put into the budget, and you're right in the sense that the purpose of it, this being an agenda item, was to try to make it clear, to the extent possible, moving forward, how to treat that issue as we approach the next budget cycle, which, believe it or not, members of the council, is going to happen very quickly. And all these things tend to just happen before you want them to.
Mr. Mayor, also in the, there are two terms of thought there, as the attorney said. One is that a directive that the agency be self-sufficient by the end of the contract period that's just expired, and then the other auto renewal. And without determining whether there was a consequence to failure to do A, we were kind of left with, well then, does it automatically renew? So we just felt the obligation to get the consensus of the council that in fact there is an understanding that despite the fact that the agency is not self-sufficient, for good reason, that we will automatically pass that.
Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just quickly, part of this would be the report to tell the council would be that you've gotten grants or you've gotten sponsorships or whatever to help support the program. And without those reports, we're blind. And that's the reason I'm bringing it up, because I just don't know what sort of improvement has happened over the year, if any, or if there's been a decline. But I don't know without having that information in a timely manner so that we can make a educated decision, I guess the best way to do it.
We'll try to give you an update that goes back in time to show the progress over the last couple time periods. Sorry you didn't get that, but we'll redo it for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, solutions. We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Further discussion? Any? None, call for the vote.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Patrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Hahn?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you. So we'll go back up to item E, job descriptions, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the following job descriptions and pay range for the following positions. These, I believe, are positions that were included in our new budget cycle. Mr. Taos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first one is Director of Marketing and Tourism. There's not a job code listed. However, since we're not sure what the market is going to do, our estimate is that this will be a pay grade 29 or a pay grade 30, to just give you a rough idea. Pay grade 29 goes from 45,000 to roughly 77,000. Grade 30 would be 47,000, 83,000. Well, we certainly don't intend to exceed those caps. We believe based on the existing classification system that they would fall within that range. And as you heard earlier in the Finance Director's report, accommodations for the past several months have been down 3 to 4%, despite lodgers' taxes being up and GRTs increasing. So certainly there's something, despite the improving economy and improving tourism, that we need to look at, particularly on behalf of the Lodgers Association of Hotels. And as you're aware, Mr. Mayor, and several council members who attended, we had a series of at least 3 meetings to discuss marketing and tourism in the county with the public. They were held at the Old County Courthouse at various days and hours, publicized in the newspapers. I would say that the number one thing that everybody, including the Tourism Committee, the Tuesday Morning Marketing Committee, Lodgers Association Board met with, and the public agreed to, is that there was a role that used to be played by Kevin Conley, our public information marketing person, which was a little more about internal public information, but still nonetheless served to gather information from all the events and individuals and organizations that are going on. Even our current contractor, Jeff Griffin, indicated that she is not able to establish that connection to get the information to market it appropriately, and that by filling this role, I think everyone unanimously felt that we would have an improved outcome. We would also have someone monitoring our, measuring our rate of return on our investment in these various services. So I believe this job description is pretty comprehensive. It used Red River, Farmington, Albuquerque, and a number of communities to describe what we were looking for. One or two things I would want to point out here that would happen is that it's our intention the new Rogers Tax Advisory Board will be meeting Monday. They would have a committee system, which would be marketing, to deal with advertising, tourism, to deal with long-range plan and update the current tourism strategic plan, and then also events committee. And that this tourism and marketing director would be the staff person to that. Also, that they would assume responsibility for the visitor center and staff. And that would take some of the responsibility off of our facilities director at this point, who's pretty overextended. And the money for this is out of the marketing funding, the lodger's tax, and basically it's a transfer of the dollars we used to spend to pay for the facilities director under the lodger's tax, and also the staff under facilities that used to be charged for maintaining and operating the convention center, which we no longer own. So it does not diminish the dollars available to actually market or the other item under those taxes, which is the operation of the transit system. And I would ask for questions and approval.
Council, Mr. Bellis and Jake, I don't know if you reviewed this, but I just wanted to make sure under item 4, work environment, the second line from the bottom, is that worded right?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to alter that. This item 4, to some extent, item 3 is pretty much standard language in all our job descriptions.
Mr. Mayor, I have questions with regards to the supervision received, and it says the tourism marketing director works under the general supervision of the town manager, or is assigned by the town manager. And I think just with the amount of criticism this council has taken with regards to the amount of money that's been expended in marketing, that individual should, I mean, under the auspices, still report to the town manager, but also report to the town council. Just because of the fact that we need to, I mean, be accountable to our constituents as to where the money goes, and how it's being spent. And a lot of times, I mean, just here recently, it's been felt that money expenditures have gone in just one direction and without full purview of the council.
Is that on a specific item, Councilor?
The marketing director.
Yeah, but
Under supervision received.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I think it's sort of a given that ultimately the town council provides supervision to all its employees. The practical mechanical way of doing that is through your town manager. And our town code says that fairly clearly. And I think it would take a revision by ordinance to our town code to really build that into the organizational structure as in terms of direct supervision. I think it should be clear though that anytime this town council wants to review the performance of the department, it can do so, and it should do so by asking the town manager to submit a report or have members of the staff available from the respective departments to answer questions to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I understand the councilman's concern, and I would propose a solution to that. I have the same concerns. And if you go under essential functions to number 2, the second most important assignment to this person is develop, implement, and evaluate a strategic marketing plan initiatives for the town. I believe that you, as the council and provider of that money representing the taxpayers, should have that opportunity to review these campaigns. And I have no problem changing that to read develops, implements, and evaluates a Taos strategic marketing plan initiatives approved by the council to sustain it. And that way, any marketing dollars, the use of those budgetarily as well as actually visually seeing the campaigns would come before you prior to their being implemented.
That's okay with me, Mr. Manager, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Peralta?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a quick question. I'm looking at the job description for the next one, but in regards to that, Mr. Bellis indicated that we would be classifying this as a 29 or 30 grade. And that, should that be in the job description, or is that in another location within the personnel policy?
This is the form we use under the job description. However, it's typically within the budget and salary schedule that we assign the pay grade and the hourly.
What I'm trying to say is that if we're going to advertise for this position, all three of these positions and any more, normally don't we give a range of salary for those positions?
Good
And shouldn't
afternoon.
that be tied directly to the job description so there isn't this fudging around at later dates?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the council and Mr. Town Manager. Yes, when we do advertise for the position, we actually will assign a pay grade and the pay range to that job description. But for now, we can just put the range. And it won't be on the job description, but it's in our own internal human resources computer system, and also on the compensation plan as well.
But my question is, shouldn't it be tied into this as a general rule so that there isn't that possibility of playing with it? Now, I can give some examples in the past where pay grades and stuff really didn't follow the job description as we anticipated them coming into it. So I'm just trying to lock things down so they're not loosey-goosey.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Peralta, yes, you are correct. Back in 2008, we did do a pay and classification plan, and at that time, all the job descriptions were assigned to a certain pay grade. And for directors, that's at a pay grade 2930. And then, but it isn't listed on the job description, and so that can be something that we change because we are planning to do a new pay and compensation plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I absolutely agree with you, and in fact, that's why I mentioned what the grade would be, because I would like from here forward that any job description that is altered come before you, and any change to the pay grade that is brought before you, that you approve both the description and the pay grade, and that we alter our forms from here forward to do that. One practice we did have at the county, which I think should be happening, is that then if the manager has the latitude to do the hiring, he has the latitude, when you approve it, to hire from the entry level to the midpoint. If he exceeds the midpoint, he needs to come back to the governing body and provide an explanation as to why he's asking for that amount. And in some cases, there may be extensive amount of experience or credentials that justify it, but at least you're aware of that.
Mr. Mayor, with regards to the classifications and pay grade, that 2930, do we have a sliding scale somewhere that, I mean, if somebody's applying for this job, they would know exactly what that 2930 means?
Yes.
And is that on the website? Where can we find that? Because I've never seen one. During the entire time I've served as a counselor, it's always been based on where they were at pay classification and whether or not they were at or below their grade. But we've never been sent the information as to what grade it is, you know, where the classification falls between the 25 and the 29, for example. And
Yes.
why some of our employees are so far on the ladder end, that, you know, maybe needing to be a 25, but they're a 15.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gonzalez, yes, we do have an internal pay plan, like a compensation where all the grades are on the plan, and we have the plan that we used where they arrived at where everybody falls into that grade. And that is an internal document. We've never put the pay plan on the website. If you would like us to add that, and it's okay with Mr. Bellis, and he directs me to do that, I will put that on there. It is on our internal share drive, so that way all the other departments, so that way when department directors are trying to make decisions, they can access, and any employee can access that pay plan and look at the grades and how those fall.
And I guess for me, I just wouldn't understand why it would be a secret what we pay employees, so I would ask that, yeah, it gets put on the website.
Mr. Bellis, I think that should be something that is included on the website.
Absolutely.
So as we move forward with this, Jake, I just want to make sure that, or Mr. Bellis, I guess, in approving them, we need to not only improve the job description, but the pay grade at the same time, so that, again, as Councilor Peralta alluded to, that, there's no fudging of that pay grade, and authorizing, I guess, the hiring up to midpoint. If it is going to be above midpoint, that the manager come back and ask for permission.
Mr. Mayor, and I think also a way to simplify that pay grade as well, and get them back into check because of the disparity that currently exists. And maybe we classify each employee within the grade that they should be in. I know money's part of the issue, but I mean, if there's just an unattainable goal that they will never hit that in their tenure with the town, then, it kind of doesn't look good for us on paper to see that they're that far behind.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gonzalez, yes, this has been something that Mr. Bellis has already discussed with me and my department. This is one of the things that he wants to see going forward, is that we relook at the pay and classification plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess we'll take these one at a time. So the marketing and tourism director, what's the wishes of the council?
Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
With the pay grade that was recommended?
Yes.
2913, 2930?
And Mr. Mayor, with
I
also,
would suggest that we just give it one, period. I would like to see it at 30.
Okay. So there was a motion. Did you want to amend that motion? Excuse me?
That's okay. To leave it at 30.
At 30, okay.
I have a question.
Okay, just 1 second. We have a second to that motion, and we'll have discussion.
Second.
We have a second discussion.
I was just wondering, is this position the person who you decide to hire? Is that going to be through a panel of people? Is that going to be something that council is going to approve of this person? How does that work? Can you fill me?
Everyone.
Actually, I will defer to Mr. Bellis.
Mr. Mayor, since this is a new function, I think it would be a good opportunity to use the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board to screen the applications that come in.
Okay.
And that they can make recommendations along with myself and the HR director to council at that point for your review and approval.
That sounds good. Thank you.
So we do any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, also if I could add to that language, just I wanted to include the language I had indicated to the councilman earlier, which is on essential functions. The second one develops, implements, and evaluates the Taos strategic marketing plan and initiatives as approved by the town council.
Include that in your motion?
Yes.
Council? Yes?
Yes.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion? Not call for the vote.
Councilmember Hunt?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Okay, so we go grants and revenue development director. Mr. Bellis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Give me 1 second here, I was writing down those amendments. This is a position we discussed in which you approved in budget be paid 100% from the general fund. And that's grants and revenue development coordinator. It's a little broader than someone that just applies for grants. We're looking to them to also be a resource at your direction to community groups. We have a number of properties, as we've discussed, that we maintain for nonprofit corporations and or that we donate money to on an annual basis. And at some point, we need to help those nonprofits and community causes become self-sufficient. And the biggest difficulty is that usually have an executive director that's part-time or doing about 20 things and not out there looking for revenue, so we can help them with that. But it's also to work with our department heads to look at our long-term capital planning needs, as well as our operational needs, and to develop, again, a long-range strategic plan to meet those over time as needs arise for replacement, as well as to look at foundations and long-term endowments. And for example, if we take on another park or decide to do a project within a park, that we seek private corporate foundation support over a period of time to not just establish that park and meet the costs of doing it, but then also, as is often done in the private sector, an endowment that would help meet the future depreciation costs of that park. Again, I'm recommending a pay grade 30 on this. It's more of a management level position. And there are people out there that have already expressed some interest in this that seem highly qualified, so I'm pretty optimistic we can get a pretty good person locally to fill this slot.
Councilman Peralta?
Just a quick question, Mr. Ellis. Where would this person be housed?
Ideally, I believe that the planning department needs to be a planning, community, and economic development department. And as we look at these initiatives going forward, I think the grant writing is probably a good fit for the planning department. However, it's going to be essential that this person, as was the case with the tourism director, coordinate very closely with the finance director. And I have no problem if as it develops, if we move ahead with a business manager who is also focused on revenues, if the finance director and the business manager feel that it's more appropriate the finance department, I'm fine with that too.
Mr. Mayor, one last question. Does this individual also monitor the grants that they receive, or is it not going to be under another person?
Absolutely, that is the intention. One of the things when we get to the next job description that we did moving Miranda over to Public Works was that our managers are often their own secretary, answer their phones and do a lot of stuff. They tend to be technically focused and they're very good at what they do, but they don't have the time to be either searching grants, applying, or monitoring those grants and doing the quarterly reporting. And I believe that has a spillover effect in that these grants sometimes don't get implemented on a timetable that's being monitored, that reports may be lagging behind, that could cost us points on our audit, it could cost us money against the grant or repeat funding. But I also feel there's a third phase to this that we're not doing, and that is that at the end of the grant we need to evaluate the effectiveness of the grant. If going after money for the sake of going after money that may cost us, and this is something we've seen lately, is that small grants of $5,000, $10,000 almost cost us more in administrative time than they do in the money we applied for. So we have to evaluate the effectiveness of the grant we applied for, whether we should reapply for it or we need to fine-tune how we're applying for money and how we're applying it to the budget programs.
Kind of like that $20,000 grant you talked about.
Kind of like that $20,000 grant, correct. There's not indefinite in kind.
Councilman Gonzalez?
Also, with regards to this individual in this position, I'd like to see it where they work as a community development director, economic development director too, because of the fact that, you know, here recently in just the meetings that we had, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Manager, with regards to the Kit Carson Electric Co-op and the economic development data center that they were looking at applying for. The city played almost absolutely no role into even knowing that you know that project was on the horizon had it not gone to the co-op. And I don't believe our local co-op is in that business as to where we should be, because so much of it would revolve around planning and zoning and issues with regards to bringing in companies. So I'd still like to see that encompass that as well too, that job description encompass that, so that, we kind of nail it all in one shot and we have one individual that is responsible for oversight of such projects and grants.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I think that's an excellent suggestion because we are not any near time in the future going to have the money to get a community and economic person separate from that. And it seems to be a natural fit. It might even open the door to our being able to coordinate those type of programs you're talking about with the other jurisdictions and maybe get some financial support for it.
Okay.
And I can't pull that language off the top of my head other than to say may add in duties may also serve as the town's community and economic development director if directed so by the town manager.
Okay.
Councilor Peralta?
One last question, Mr. Manager. I don't see in the job description that this person would monitor and oversee the implementation of these grants. So maybe I misunderstood what you said, or maybe you misunderstood my question.
I understood your question. I thought I included that. Let me just read this for a second to see if I can find it. And if not, I definitely can put it in there.
So under essential functions, Mr. Mayor, maintains a grant tracking schedule for all programs and departments.
That's just a tracking. It's not actually overseeing and ensuring that the grants are properly administered. I saw that too. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If not, Rick, maybe we could include that.
I will certainly include that language. That was certainly my intent.
So there's two things that we want to include. One is that, and the other one I think was
The community, the service, community and economic development.
all right. So in approval of it, we would include that language for both and pay grade 30.
That's my recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else comes from council? What is the wishes of council? We have a motion to approve. Have a second to that?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Not call for the vote.
Councilmember Paget?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember John?
Yes.
We'll go on to the next item, Assistant Transit Superintendent. Mr. Bellis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This job description put together by the Public Works Director and Miranda, who would serve in capacity. Originally I envisioned it as a Public Works Office Manager to assist Public Works Director in handling the grants, contracts, contractor bid packages, scope of services reporting, back and forth, insurance, all the things, complicated things that go along. Miranda has, I would say this is definitely a custom-made job description in that she has that background having served as the everything from the asset manager to the assistant finance director, and certainly was our grants coordinator and seems ideally suited to helping Public Works Director with that. In addition, however, both the Public Works Director and the candidate indicated that they felt that would not take up their full time in doing it. So, and at the same time, the transit, there were a number of changes in the transit department, and the Public Works Director indicated that he would like to consolidate those two jobs. So it does look a little unusual, but given the short experience I have had with the person under this description and with the Public Works Director, and they seem to work well together, I'm willing to do that, and so far it has seemed to work out pretty well. And this would also be a pay grade 30. think that's about it, unless French or Amy have something to add to it. I do see the role here under the third part, grants administration, diminishing a little bit with the hiring of the other person. However, there are some grant responsibilities that are unique to capital projects and are better handled in-house in their implementation, because they tend to be more technical in nature than general reporting.
Councilman Peralta?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vallis, this grants administration responsibilities to research grant programs, is this a duplication of the other individual we're doing here, or do we need to refine this description to apply it only to public works projects?
I would agree with you, Councilman. This was developed much before we created the job that you just approved, and I absolutely agree with you that adding that language, I don't think it even needs to say research grant programs. Could probably just cut everything off over to assist public works director, and we could say in reviewing and implementing applications. I don't want to, it doesn't have to be in here, but I totally don't want to exclude the possibility of department heads researching on their own, that very often they get notices of programs that are very specific to something they want to do, such as the COPS grant or fire equipment fund that they may want to bring to the attention of the grant writer.
And I understand that, but I'm just saying is that, in other words, if we limited her grants administration and research and stuff to public works, then it wouldn't be a conflict with the other where they start butting heads about who knows what and who should be doing what.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a good idea, because CDBG would fall under this purview, and I think that would keep that separate. Council? Any adjustment to that language? What's the wishes?
Move for approval.
Pay rate 30?
Yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not, call for the vote.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Hunt?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Concha?
Yes.
Okay. So, go on to item F, contract TT 1115, task order G, and go to Mr. Espinosa.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. John is handing out some correspondence that we had with FAA out of Fort Worth, and I believe it came from the last council meeting where Councilmember Peralta had inquired about combining the projects and making it one big one. That way we have the same contractor doing the work. We had gotten approval to do that, and then later on he retracted his finding and did not allow us to do that. So I wanted to bring that to your attention right away. Mr. Mayor, there is a change on the approval of the contract. It's contract TT-11-115. That was a typo on the agenda item that I did not catch. And I apologize for that. With that, the contract would be for task order G, issued to Armstrong Engineering in the amount of $566,245, excluding the GRT. Services will include the shortening and reworking of the existing runway, constructing the haul road and the staging area, constructing the runway and the taxiway. And it's basically the dirt work. There will be no asphalt, there will be no utilities, and obviously there won't be any pavement markings. It's strictly the dirt work under task order G. As part of the agenda item, I've attached the different phases of that. We have negotiated the contract. Through our negotiations, it was reduced by $125,000 or 18% from the original proposal. And in addition to that, after speaking with the representatives from FAA, we will reduce it even more because we won't need a final engineering report because the runway will not be finalized. So that dollar amount will come off as well, and it's in the amount of $4,200 or something like that. And with that, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I ask for your approval.
Councilman Peralta.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I thought that the shortening of the runway, the existing runway, was already designed in the designs of the total project. So
Yes,
why
that's-
are we paying for it again in a sense?
We're not
I mean,
paying
according
for-
to what French was saying.
Yeah, we're not paying for the design of shortening the runway, but actually the shortening of the runway, the physical shortening of the runway.
Okay, but that was not the way he described it.
Right, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, I apologize for that. The part of task order G is to repackage the drawings. In the repackaging, that shortening and reconstructing or rebuilding of the existing runway is included on there, so it won't be redesigned. There is no redesign at all on the project.
Now, in the shortening of the runway, is that going to be permanent, or is that only during the construction phase?
No, that is permanent, so they are not intersecting runways.
And why is that? Because that runway is so short.
Because the FAA has rules about intersecting runways, and
I look at the International Airport, 3 of their runways cross each other.
but they're also a controlled airport. I know there are other airports that have intersecting runways that are not controlled airports like ours. But that is their preference, is no intersecting runways for safety reasons.
So the shortening of that, refresh my memory, is like 200 feet?
It's
something like that?
420 feet,
So we're down to 5,000 feet
5383.
currently.
No, it's 5,800,
Oh, it's 50, okay.
5,803 right now.
I
It's shortened to 53.
had thought it was 5,400 feet right now.
5,803 is the current limit.
So what does that do as far as the ability to land aircraft on that short runway?
The smaller aircraft and some of the bigger, more powerful jets that can get off the ground in that shorter distance, it has to do with not just the weight of the aircraft, but also the power that it has. There are some medium-range business jets that are going to have a harder time using that shorter runway, but the small aircraft and the bigger jets won't have as much of a problem.
Unless they're fully fuel loaded.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Hunt.
No comments at this time.
Any further discussion on it?
Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion, Councilor?
So it is my understanding that we will be, if we approve this, moving forward on a roughly $33,000 expenditure for what I'm going to call the revising and repackaging. And then Armstrong and Associates will put together a big package that will then go out to the go out to the contractors and be available to the public. That'll cost us an additional $20,000 roughly. So out of this $566,000 expenditure, we'll be expensing $55,000. It is my understanding, and I believe the council has previously agreed, after the bids go out and become public knowledge, that we will conduct a forum. I guesstimate sometime in mid-August. Could be, that's variable. And that during that forum, we will be able to hear objective analysis from proponents of the airport and opponents of the airport. That's my understanding to date. What I'd like to additionally propose is that when Armstrong comes back to us with their recommendation as to who the awardee is, that we conduct a public meeting where we can analyze what has happened and what it is we are about to do. And before we expense the $512,000 remaining for the actual construction, that we commit to having yet another public gathering. I say all of this fully realizing that over the last decade, there have been numerous meetings, 400 citizen comments, 800 pages of documentation, and I'm grateful to you, French, and John, especially John, for getting that information to me. But in the hope of being really open and transparent, and given our long history with overhead flights and the potentially controversial subject that the airport brings, that we allow the public to go through and experience all possible commentary periods. So, though it may be simplistic on my part, what I am suggesting is what I've heard referred to as a stoplight procedure. So we approve a project up to a certain point, stop, evaluate, solicit public comment, and then get ready to move forward. Now I realize that from the town's perspective and FAA's perspective, given all of the previous documented public comment, that for all intents and purposes, this is a done deal. But what we are hearing from the public is that they feel it is not a done deal. And so I'm going to ask for the mayor and the council's acquiescence on this point to give the opportunity for the public to respond every step along the way on this project. I could go on, but I'll stop there. So I'm proposing essentially that if we approve the accumulated $50,000 out of this $566,000 budget, that we incorporate a stoplight procedure so that the public has access to all of the information, that proponents and opponents have the ability to state in an objective fashion their concerns, and then an assessment before we move on to the next phase. So I think enough said. I could certainly answer questions. I put a lot of thought into this. I've received a lot of public comment, pro and con, and in the spirit of this new, open, and transparent administration, I would propose that we as a community go after this problem in a very open, forthright manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other comments, questions? I know that we have agreed to, have these comment periods. I think we're getting set up Mr. Ballas to have one, basically an informational item that will come up after this is presented?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I believe Councilman Hahn accurately has indicated, said that once these bids are out, all information is available, that I agree we would hold an informational forum probably about mid-August.
So we have a motion on the floor, we have a second.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second for the purpose of discussion.
We had it.
Oh, sorry, okay,
Yeah.
discussion.
More further discussion, yes, sir. He was under discussion.
Sorry. I am not opposed to any more open forums, but I do not want anything that would hinder or stop the progress of us being able to move forward with the airport. I've said it over and over again that, not just one decade, Councilor Hahn, but 3 decades. 3 decades plus have passed on public forum. I've heard it all the way since I was a child when my mom sat on this council. So Mr. Mayor, I'm not opposed to informal forum, but as long as it does not lead to any pausing or stalling of the progress moving forward.
Councilor Gonzalez, I really appreciate your perspective, and I differ. However, when we come to phase 3, elements 1 and 2 of the construction services were $512,000, the majority of the $566 appropriated would be spent on construction. I'm envisioning the presentation of that proposal to the public comment hearing, and then before we disperse that money to the awardee, the council would then vote up or down on that disbursement. So to be blunt, though the odds at, this has been a 30-40-year project, to be blunt, there is still a chance that that funding would not be allowed to be dispersed by the council. I believe the public has a vested stake in this, and we need to hear from both sides. So I'm not saying that it will be stopped or won't be stopped. I'm just saying that the final disbursement for phase 1, element 2 of the 512 could be stopped, pending council's approval to disperse or not.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, call for the vote.
Councilmember Hutchins?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yep.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Hahn?
Yes.
Thank you. So we'll go on and move down to number 7, town manager's report, regular meeting schedule. Mr. Bellis?
Thank you, Jen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your work. I think you did a good job at simplifying it for everybody. It's a complex project. Thank you. This is an item that came up from the executive secretary, and I believe Clark that pointed out to me that we have a potential conflict at our next meeting, our meeting in August, with the League of Municipalities, and we wanted to know whether you wanted to, since it diverges from the approved schedule at the beginning of the year, you would have to approve setting an alternate date or canceling the meeting.
Councilman Peralta?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think that we can cancel the meeting, but if we need to have a special meeting prior to the departure to the municipal league, we could do something, let's say on Monday, if we had pressing business that had to be covered. I don't think anybody would be adverse to that.
I agree with that, Councilman.
And I agree also, but I really need to start getting more notice for all of these special meetings because it's killing my practice. I'm not my patience.
Take that under advisement, Mr. Bellis.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I guess there should a motion to be in order to cancel the meeting for the 26th in order to meet our open meetings requirement. So I'll move that we cancel that with the idea that we may have to have a special meeting to handle special needs.
We have a motion, we have a second to that motion?
Second.
And a second, discussion, further discussion? None, call for the vote.
I'm sorry, Mayor, Councilman, second.
And
Andrew?
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yes.
Councilmember Clayton.
Yes.
Councilmember
yes,
Councilmember Hunt.
Yes.
thank you. So we'll go out to item B, renaming of the town park, update on the process and timeframe on the renaming. Mr. Bellis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since this is such a controversial issue, it's a matter that I felt before we started implementing the process, I want to keep the council informed. The plan at the present time, or the recommended plan from my office, is that we would advertise in the Taos News 2 weeks in a row, set up a link on our website, which people could then, encourage people to either send in by mail, or they could go to the website and submit a recommendation for a name. They could submit an explanation if they wanted to as to why they believe that name should be selected. And certainly they could do it either anonymously or they could identify themselves so that we could contact them back. After those 2 weeks, I'm guessing that what we should do is set up a committee of at least 3 and not more than 5 persons who would set up some general parameters. For example, if they decide, rather than naming it for one soldier, another soldier, that would cause a problem. So we'll name it for an individual soldier, that sort of thing. And that once those parameters are set, they could take some rough looks at these proposed submissions, including any ideas that any of the council members might have. There would be a public meeting held at which a narrowing down of the names could happen, at least by categories. And then an interesting thing that happened, and the judge is going to kick me for saying this, but they came up in conversation with Judge McElroy, and that was when we were talking about the murals at the old courthouse, is that maybe we set up a panel of 3 judges. They used to call them tribunals, where if people don't like the selection or it narrows down to 3, if people want to make an argument for them, that you have current and retired judges who can sit there and hear the arguments and the merits of it. Anyway, however it winds up at the end of that process, whatever that means, it would come back to you, presentation before the town council. And it's my understanding we are continuing ahead based on the motion that was made previously, that the town attorney and myself will come back to you very shortly with descriptions or however direction we decide to go, easements, for the segregation and separation of the cemetery as Kid Carson Memorial Park.
Mr. Mayor,
Gonzalez?
there is one other option that I would like to throw in there, and that's the option to just leave it alone. And I had a huge number of constituent requests to do just that, to leave it alone. So if that could also be included as part of that, survey or whatever.
Absolutely, we will include it. Certainly make my life easier. Shorten the process.
Councilor Hahn?
I'm going to waiver with your permission just for a second. And ma'am, did you come in here for the lady that just walked in for the attachment G airport thing?
Yes.
You just missed it. Could you run out the back door and get a report? And then if you have a question, pending the mayor's approval, maybe we can answer. I'm so sorry about that. We thought it'd be at 3 and we're moving along
That's okay.
more quickly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Regarding the renaming of the park, I appreciate the fact that there are expedient ways of renaming the park, and certainly many alternatives, Councilman Gonzalez. However, I, as one councilor, would really like to somehow create, facilitate a community conversation about all of the angst that this initiative has brought up, pro or con, ambivalent or otherwise, everybody in the community is talking about it. And what exactly are they talking about? Well, they're talking about a dude's name, a revered general, or a killer, all depending on your perspective. But I think what's underlying this is our community's bigotry and racism. My and our inability to be heuristic, to walk in another's shoes. And so rather than looking for a quick fix here, and certainly Judge McElroy's suggestion of a tribunal is certainly fun to contemplate and think about. And certainly the expedient method of putting together a committee, having the committee suggest their names and having the committee pick some names and having the public then decide on a name is certainly a very democratic way to go. But I think we're missing the point, at least from my perspective. And so I would actually want to insert pending the mayor, council, communities, and managers' input, that first we start with looking at the pink elephant in the room, which is our own bigotry and racism. And then perhaps moving beyond that to finding some consensus and then offering some suggestions, perhaps a committee then in a public meeting and so on. This is a process. There is no need to rush through this process. There's no need to gloss over this process. We need to look at it. Now, you're going to think I'm half-baked and pretty much nuts. Just about everybody I know thinks that of me, so join the club, but here it is. This is an economic driver. There are people in our community whose businesses suffer because of our bigotry and racism. And I would like to address that. There are strengths that the folks from Taos, Pueblo, can bring into our plaza. We have strengths that we can take across to the other side of the cattle guard. Rather than trying to move through this in a hasty fashion, I would ask us, as Councilman Peralta stated, when we first looked at this issue, we voted to change the name of Parks Redwell. Councilman Peralta said, you know, I'd like to think about this. Well, I think Councilman Peralta is right in this perspective. Now we put the issue out there. Everybody in town's talking about it. Everybody in town's jazzed. Now let's use this opportunity to really help bring us together as a community. So I don't want the issue to be dealt with in a week or two and settled and we move on as if nothing was going on. I would really like us as a community to look at our own internal biases. I need to take the time out to look at my own bigotry and racism. And I think we all do. And I think if we're able to do that, it will bring us closer together as a community, and more importantly, become an under the radar or a silent economic driver. I told you I was half-baked, but I think if we can open our arms to all of our neighbors, and if they in turn feel the same, we're all going to benefit. So I'd ask for us actually to slow down, perhaps utilize the services of professional facilitators to foster this conversation, and then perhaps move forward with name suggestions, committees, and/or tribunals. That's it. Thank you.
Councilman Hahn, just recently, myself, Jake, and Mr. Vallis met with the gentleman that has brought restorative justice to the community. And they have a proposal that they would like to present, and I think that here in the next month, they would like to present it to the council to move forward with it. I think it's going to be sponsored, hopefully through UNM, and it deals with those exact issues that you brought up, and I think this is something and a way to move forward within the community. I think this sparked a lot of animosity within the community, and I think it's a great idea, and I hope you would be open-minded to listen to them as they come forward in this presentation. And it's possible grant funded that would be funded through, not through us, but through UNM. And it's a great opportunity for us to put this on the table. So as you said, we can take our time in moving forward with this and let some of these opportunities play out within the community. This was just any other comment, Councilor Peralta?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that you're not happy. But naming or not naming the park has nothing to do with the issues that were brought up by this example. The problem we have with bigotry or intolerance or any of those issues that, or conflicts between the cultures are not going to be settled by the naming of the park. Those are issues that we have to work on a daily basis and correct and try to do the best we can to become a good operating family together. And that's what we need to do daily. And this is not going to do anything in that regard, because that has to come from within us personally, and we have to do it in a way that we feel is being respectful of everyone, and that's part of it. And we need to do that. So the park naming isn't an issue. The issue is here is that we have to have the ability within ourselves to say that there are issues within our community that need to be fixed, and we are willing to work on them together. And that's what we have to go forward with, and not put our head in the sand like an ostrich. The name of the park has nothing to do with it. I think it did bring up issues brought to the surface, but they've always been. And it's been our problem in many cases where we have been unwilling to recognize them and work with them and try to make this a viable community in the way that everybody here has the ability to succeed. We try, and we're going to make mistakes because we're not perfect. But because we do things that may be harmful, we can't just set them aside. We have to make amends. That's important. And I think that's what you would like to see us to do, and I agree with it. But it has nothing to do with the naming of the park at this point. It has to do with our recognizing that we are not perfect, and that we don't, in a lot of cases, respect the people around us for who they are and what they are. And we need to do more of that in order to make this community a better community to live in and to solve issues that concern all of us and our children.
Thank you, Councilman Peralta. The name has been a real touchstone. It has served as a stimulus. And with all stimulus comes a response, a consequence. And they feel that if we don't use this opportunity and keep the stimulus or the pressure of the renaming of the park present in our consciousness, we will not begin to address this. It's pressure, and I don't want to see the pressure reduced. I'm concerned that with my own denial, I will, okay, great, the park is, we're going to settle. We're going to settle on Councilman Gonzalez's suggestion that we just leave it alone and call it Kit Carson Park. Now the pressure's off, there's nothing to talk about. But if we keep the pressure on myself, on ourselves, on us as a community, while we are going to be renaming the park, or perhaps not, we keep the pressure on, we keep people involved. There are a lot of folks out there who have a lot of passion about this. And I'm just afraid that if we find the quick fix, we will continue to ignore the problem. So that would be my counter, with all due respect, Councilman Peralta, that we keep the heat on, that we hold ourselves accountable, that we audit ourselves, our behavior, our thoughts. Thank you.
I have a comment on that, since I voted for the name change. That was a hell of an experience to learn lessons from. And, can you hear? Oh. And, there is no rush. And there's just so many other important things to do. But it came in front of us and we responded. And I think it's crucial to get the community involved and that we get this committee going, go for suggestions. And it did. It made people bring their history books out. It made people want to learn and want to find out about Kit Carson or Pablo Martinez or Taos history. But I don't think there's a big rush on this at the moment. It did cause a lot of hostility and animosity, and but it also made known to me and probably to all of you that there is a huge support for the name change as well. We're living in a new time, and young people also for the future of Taos. They just want to see changes and no more animosities. But I think getting the committee together is just really crucial. And we move forward on possibly changing the name. Or in the end, if everybody ends up saying no, well, but we need to listen to the community first and foremost. I don't want to go off my emotion.
Thank you. So we do have a way that we're moving forward, Mr. Bellis, and some suggestions here we need to look at as we continue to move forward.
Understood, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So the next item, if there's no further discussion, is
Just forgive me, Mr. Mayor and Council. So these folks that you had mentioned, Mr. Mayor, are going to make a presentation to us, this coming Tuesday?
I don't know exactly. They wanted to reach out to other portions of the community, make sure that it's something that they have buy-in with. I'm sure they'll probably be getting a hold of you. I did recommend that they needed to bring it back to the council. They weren't sure exactly when. They wanted to make sure that they would have the buy-in they need from UNM and
So can we kind of collaborate with them as well as Mr. Bellis's suggestions for the committees and Honorable Judge Jeff McElroy's idea of tribunals and put all of that in the mix and kind of brainstorm our way into a creative solution there?
Yeah, just so that I don't get in trouble, I don't want to get Judge McElroy.
But I will.
It came up during the discussion when we were talking about justice and murals and things like that. There's some people that are for, and I asked if you have any ideas. I can either take direction from the council as to what the process is, or, I mean, I think what I proposed tries to cover every possible base by having a public meeting, by reaching out to the media. We can even get some PSA be honest, I mean, if it doesn't offensive to anyone, I think we can actually use this as a positive, as a positive tourism thing to reach out and say to people, look, we're really open to ideas in the community. How do you see Taos? How do you see the park? What does it mean to you? I definitely think we need that media outreach. I definitely think we need at least one public meeting. And I would say, in my job, being a lightning rod for you as elected officials, I think it would be a nice layer to have some arguments made for 3 really good names to a couple of responsible people in the community that could provide you with some objective insight. But it's your process, and I'm totally open to whatever you want. And as the mayor's indicated, we did have the meeting in regards to the reconciliation or the bigger discussion. And I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. They can both happen at the same time.
Councilman?
Mr. Mayor, with all due respect to all parties involved, I just want to make sure that it doesn't become an inundated issue, and that staff time doesn't get swallowed up with just the issue, because I'm getting the big backlash from this community that I'm getting is, don't we have bigger fish to fry beyond the naming of a park? So I don't want you, Mr. Manager, to expense all your time with regards to this.
I appreciate that, Council.
It is important, but I think we have some large-scale issues that we need to put together as well.
Yeah, I totally agree, Councilman Gonzalez. I just don't want to miss this opportunity, and I do like what you said, Mr. Bellis, about these two seemingly different approaches don't have to be that, if I'm hearing you, I'm not, but this merged approach may be useful. I'd also like to suggest that we keep this on the agenda so that we can settle it and come to some kind of holistic conclusion. And I definitely support Councilman Gonzalez's thought that this should not become the overriding concerns. We got potholes to fix. I appreciate you spending the extra time on it, and all of us have spent a lot of extra time. And I look forward to more citizen comments, and perhaps the citizens out there have ideas regarding this and how we should approach it. So keep them coming. The comments says.
Have some direction, Mr. Bellis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Thank you. So we'll go on to item E, resolution 1433, compensation plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have before you a series of spreadsheets that you've seen before. These are with the final worked out numbers on benefits. We have not listed the individuals here because in anticipating that there is no item about an individual or their performance, this has to be discussed under the state law in public session. And in case there is a request by the press, we felt in fairness to the employees, we wanted to exclude these individuals. It is exactly the same as the fourfold salary breakouts that we gave you before. And the resolution indicates the steps, which is that all employees, in order to address the cost of living, who are not part-time, temporary, police service, and are not on probation, so they've been here at least a year, will receive, including managers, will receive a 25-cent an hour increase. Those who had with the marginal increase above the 25 cents, which is 0 to 24 cents, could be brought to their step, were done so, and that ranged from 6 to 17 cents. Those that still were below their step, but under $3, receive an extra 25 cents for a total of 50 cents. And those above $3 received an additional 25 cents above that. And for those that were again, said publicly, those that were the most deeply disadvantaged actually are compensated more than the 3%. It was intended as an average, and I think that achieves the goal that this council set forth. This does not include the managers, and there were 1 or 2 people outside of this that were thrown out of the compensation scale. those individuals that need to be adjusted by pay grade and job description, by classification, we will begin working on that now. And I have a list from all the managers who those individuals are. There aren't many. It won't have much of a financial impact. And we have enough money to do that and review with the managers and still be within the plan. And as was presented by the finance manager during her earlier presentation of the budget, the total cost of salary increases was $131,000. And on the last page, we list the actual full amount. So the full amount of the plan of $27,145. And the cost of additional fringe costs brings the total cost of the plan to $132,360,173. It also fits within the individual departmental thresholds that we had to meet, particularly those that were enterprise funds, which we could not supplement or do not want to supplement the general funds. Is that accurate, Finance Director?
Yes, I'm sorry.
And the Finance Director has certified that funds are available within both the overall budget that you approved and within the individual departmental budgets to do this. What we're asking for is you do not have the full salary schedule here because there was no way we could bring to you the full budget to be submitted on Thursday and reconcile all the little side effects this has within each of the departments and get it in on time. So we're asking you in the resolution to adopt this as a supplement to the salary schedule that you approved already, but we will come back with an amended salary schedule of all employees. I won't say by the next meeting on Tuesday, but within the next 2 weeks for you to have available to you for reference for the rest of the year.
The next meeting.
Is not next to that.
Next meeting.
Yeah, next meeting. All right. Anything else, Council? We have, what's the wishes of the Council?
Mr. Mayor, if this is not the final plan, shouldn't we wait till we get the final plan to approve it?
It is the plan, Counselor. It is the final plan. It's just, these are additions to the salary schedule. But we do reflect what those adjustments are carried all the way up with benefits on here.
Okay, move for approval.
We have a motion to approve Resolution 1433, compensation plan. We have a second to that.
Second.
And a second. Further discussion? Not call for the vote.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Hahn?
Yes.
Councilmember Cantu?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go 8 matters from Mayor and Council. We have the New Mexico Municipal League Annual Conference and the voting delegate. Just asking if basically I would be the delegate and the Mayor Pro Tem. Councilor Peralta.
Can I ask one question real quick? I know we were talking just now about our next meeting, but I have it on my calendar that we have a meeting, special
August
meeting
5th.
to hear ordinance 1409 on Tuesday. That's still correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct, if I'm not mistaken.
But the regular
Regular
council
meeting.
meeting will be on the 12th, right?
Yes, the regular meeting on the 12th.
And that's what I was talking about.
Councilman Peralta bought me an extra week with that one. I appreciate it greatly.
And this is at our annual business meeting. So.
Yes.
And I haven't been to the annual municipal league meeting before. It's been new, and I'm sure I can be coached by Councilman Peralta and Councilman Gonzalez that have been to several of these. And I'm sure it's not much unlike the one that goes on within the county. So.
It's pretty much the same thing, Mr. Mayor. I just caution everyone not to eat too much at once because it follows lunch. So,
Yeah.
so you don't sleep through there.
All right.
It
So
depends on the president, too.
yeah.
I'll have to many hours.
So I'd like to go ahead and move to approve Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. No further discussion, call for the vote.
Councilmember Hunter,
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez,
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta,
Abstain.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
So we'll go on to item B, appointment of Planning and Zoning Commission. We have those in your packet. I know we've gone several rounds now over this. What is the wishes of the council?
I'd like to move to approve planning and zoning.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did not, well, let me look back here. I don't think I have that.
Should be in
the suggestions. Okay, thank you. I guess I just haven't gotten there yet.
Mr. Mayor, in case anyone's unfamiliar with the newest name on there, did you want me to read his qualifications?
Sure.
Mr. Durham has a master's in urban and regional planning from the University of Illinois. He's a staff planner for the city and county of Denver from 75 to 81. He's a planning and development consultant from 91 to 83. Director of the Urban and Regional Planning Institute and David Jensen Associates in Denver, 83 to 85. Senior project manager, T&D Technologies, Colorado Springs. Owner partner, Norris Design, 92 to 2010. He's is the president of the Stagecoach Hills Neighborhood Association, and he's a member of the Taos County Planning Commission. He also authored a book for the National Home Builders Association called How to Win at the Zoning Table, which I'm sure Mr. Yarbitz has no copies of. And the thought was that since we have a lot of development anticipated around the airport, and he represents that neighborhood association, that it would be a good linkage. Obviously well qualified as a planner, and I have had experience with him on the County Planning Commission and found that he is a very reasonable moderating voice. It might give a connection between the two planning commissions for our plans to develop the airport overlay and cooperative zoning.
Just a quick question on that. How has it been in the community?
Um, 2009, I believe. He's showing that he was a volunteer for Taos. He started in 2009.
Could have been here before that, just when we started volunteering.
What is the length of term on is it 4 years or 3 years?
Mr. Mayor, I believe because there's some staggered, that almost everyone had expired on there, I would pay particular attention. You may want to adjust who has what term there, but some of those terms expire in 2015 or at the end of the year, some at mid-year, some at 2016 mid-year, and some at end of the year, as I recall. So if you're more unfamiliar with someone on the planning commission or they hadn't been on there before, you might want to give them one of the shorter terms.
Well, I'm just, why would we want to do mid-year?
Actually, I'm going to let Martha answer that fully, but I think she's got a pretty good explanation for it.
We were talking about mid-year just because when you have these, even though the terms are staggered, when you have quite a few members coming off at the end of the year, and especially if you have a new mayor, it takes a bit to try and find people willing to serve on the commissions. And so by staggering them halfway through the year and then at the end of the year, you have more rotation and there's more of a chance for overlap with the more experienced members versus the new members coming in. What has happened in the past is currently with the Planning and Zoning Commission in particular is they could not find replacement commissioners, and so we have quite a few commissioners all serving until their replacement was found. And then at the beginning of this year, we are looking for new members, and the old mayor was reluctant to appoint anyone before the new mayor was elected. And so that's why we're having this problem with trying to find all these members for this commission. So the thought from staff was if we stagger them even halfway through the year as well as at the end of the year, that we would have an easier time finding volunteers and really get good people to serve.
My thought was to stagger them so that you have only 2 expiring every year instead of 4 or 3.
We could do that too. I mean,
Then you only have to find 2 people instead of having to find 3 or 4.
right. That's a pretty big commission, so that would work too. I mean, our other problem has been keeping good records with so much turnover of the planning director.
Just my thought. Curious as to why you would also assume to me that the assignment should be at the same time as our fiscal year.
I thought about that too, so that's why some of the terms are ending June 30th. Anyway, this is a good discussion item, which I think the council should actually decide on.
I think maybe the mayor should decide this. And actually, we don't get him to decide very much.
Yeah, don't do it.
Maybe we should appoint our planning directors to 4-year terms.
That's a good idea.
Council, my recommendation is, that, again, and I don't know if we'd have to change anything, and look at Mr. Bellassor, yourself, Jake, to change it to 2 every, so we just having to change 2 out. That means some people will be on there for, maybe not, I was thinking 6 years,
I mean, what does play into this is like the terms and how long they are, is like you're talking about 3-year terms, and then how many terms can a commissioner serve consecutively. Right now, they can serve 3 terms consecutively. So that's the other piece of this equation that you might want to think about when making the decision.
Councilor Peralta?
If I could, Martha, according to the ordinance, how long is the term? 4 years or 3 years?
I think it's 3 years or 2 years. I don't remember. I don't have the code in front of me. Maybe the town attorney does.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Peralta, the code contemplates 2-year terms that among the 7 members are staggered. It unfortunately is impractical, if not impossible, to achieve that right now because we haven't been carefully monitoring the length of term and meeting these appointments with the expiration of those terms. So, to meet the intent of, to meet the strict language of the ordinance, these appointments would have to be for 2 years. I think, frankly, that you have a little bit of leeway there because it's impossible to meet both that provision of the ordinance and the provision regarding having staggered terms. It may be overly complicated to have 2 periods during the year that there are appointments happening. It really is going to depend on the person in Martha's position to make that happen. And I would defer to the council to determine whether that's feasible going forward, given the historical turnover of that office.
And they're allowed to serve 3 terms?
The code states that they will be appointed for a term of 2 years and may be reappointed for no more than 3 consecutive additional terms of 2 years each. So So a total of, the way I
8
do
years.
that is a total of 4 2-year terms maximum consecutive.
So a total of 8 years.
Correct.
So in 2 years, you're just barely getting to the moratorium.
Exactly.
So my thought would be, in other words, kind of like what we talked about with the Historic Preservation Commission and who can serve on that. In this case, we would be talking about changing the ordinance to maybe 3-year terms, 3 consecutive, and then having staggered people, 2 every year and 1 and 3 on that 3rd year or whatever. And that way we get to having only 2 members rotating off at a time instead of 3 or 4. And I'm asking a question in the sense in asking for your thoughts on that as far as how that would make your life easier, provided that you were going to be that individual who had to monitor it.
I think the longer terms would help a lot, because it takes a bit for a commissioner to understand the role on the commission, to understand what a quasi-judicial hearing is, how that works. And once you have that knowledge base, that takes a minimum of really, like you're saying, 2 years or 1 year. And it would help staff, I think, keep the continuity. And it would also make it easier as far as this accounting.
So what would be your recommendation, Martha?
I like Councilor Peralta's suggestion to have the 3-year terms and then allow 3 consecutive terms, so for a total of 9 years, and stagger the membership. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so then we need to change the bylaws then,
The code.
or the code, excuse me. Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, the question I have in that regard, real quickly, is when are we going to bring the public hearing on the change for the Historic Preservation Commission? The language we looked at last meeting.
I believe we advertised that for the August 5th meeting. However, we did not advertise the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we do have to do legal advertisements, so we need to advertise that in a town newspaper at least 15 days prior to the hearing. So the Planning and Zoning Commission could not be heard at the same time as the Historic Preservation Commission unless we move and continue the Historic Preservation Commission discussion too.
So the earliest we could look at that would be September, the first meeting in September.
Probably.
So we can get that on the agenda, Councilman?
Mr. Mayor, during the last meeting, I had requested that Pavel be placed back on that Planning and Zoning Commission. Can you give me some direction as to why that didn't happen?
Well, again, we tried several times to get it approved. I did put it on there because we couldn't get it approved last time.
Well, I think that's why at the last meeting I had said, I acknowledged I wasn't there during that when there died for the lack of a second. That's why I asked for it to be brought back this meeting with regards to Pavel. After the discussion we're having right now, I'm still, wondering where he's at with regards to his term limit, how long he served, and whether or not maybe it's time for him to sit off. But I'd rather have that information prior to moving forward and kick somebody off that's given a great deal of service to this community at the same time.
Okay. So again, could have another stalemate, I don't know. Again, we have a motion and we have a second to this. We hadn't been able to get off dead center, so I don't know how we move forward here. But we do have recommendations too that we'll bring back, and we'll get them advertised to change that. So I guess we'll just move forward. Call for the vote.
Well,
Oh, they're still under discussion, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just, in line with Councilman Gonzalez, I would like to thank all of those previous citizen commissioners for all of their efforts over the years. It's uncompensated. Everything in this town moves through planning and zoning, is my contention, and I would also argue that in many ways it's more important than the town council, because if you don't get through P&Z, you don't get here. So it's absolutely essential. I'm very grateful for all of their efforts, and I'm also very excited about the folks who put in their applications and those who have the seven, Jan and Jim, Dennis, John, Justin, Billy, and Eddie. That's really a solid team. And I'm grateful for their willingness to serve our community. So kudos to those that have been, and kudos to those who are willing to serve. Thank you.
Discussion, more discussion, Councilman?
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to ask a quick question of Martha, and that is if she knew how long Val had been on the commission continuously.
I checked into that. I know that he has at least one more term that he can serve. So he could be appointed and serve another term.
So he's been roughly 6 years?
Right.
Consecutive or 6 years total?
He served for one term, I believe, and then there was a break in service, and then he was reappointed. And so now he has one more consecutive term that he can serve. So he is eligible as a candidate to serve for another term.
Any further discussion? If not, call for the vote.
Councilmember Barrone?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
No.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Then we'll go on to the next item. So the appointees are Jan DeBay, James Pollard, Dennis Garcia, John Durham, Justin Lee, Billy Romero, and Eddie Lucero. So we're going on to item C, appointment of Historic Preservation Commission.
Mr. Mayor, the only changes here are that we signed the terms to 4 members that previously approved. And subsequent to your approval, Mr. Lukish attended the first meeting and announced that he had resigned from it. I believe he subsequently sent a letter to you, so he's being replaced by William Christmas, who is the co-owner with Polly Ray of the Dunn Street Shops. So he meets the description of a property owner within the district, along with Marika Coma, who also is a historic property owner within the district.
So basically, we're adopting one, and we're looking at the dates, correct, Mr. Ross? Term limits? Or
Terms.
terms? Okay. Council?
So William Christmas and Marika Choma, they only have 6 months appointed to them?
Yeah,
Is that correct?
again, I'm presuming you're gonna automatically renew them, but we had the same problem on Historic Commission, that no one kept track of the terms, and basically everyone's term had expired, so you're really appointing from ground zero, and you can assign whatever terms you want, but we're at the same problem of having to create staggered terms again to be consistent with the ordinance.
Council wishes to do the same type of terms on this board as we did with the previous planning and zoning?
Yes.
So that's something we can get advertised and noted so that it can come back to the council for ratification. Councilman Peralta?
Mr. Mayor, you If I could, Martha, again, in regards to those people who are being reappointed to this commission, such as Oscar and Marika, how long have they served on the historical review board?
I did not look at them specifically, at least recently. I think I looked at them initially. I think they were both eligible to serve for another term. I know that Marika for sure is. Oscar has served for quite a while, and I have not checked how many terms he served, but I believe he's eligible as he was on the list originally after the clerks and I tried to figure out, you know, what the terms were and how long that people served.
I think though that at some point in time, people weren't even looking at the terms. They just were reappointed because they wanted to serve or the mayor asked them to serve again. So, you know, I think that it's important what we're doing now to try to get a handle on that. But I think in some cases, there's people who've been on for a long time. And so that's why I'm asking the question.
Right.
If we're looking at this thing, we should be rotating some of these people off, and we should be rotating them on.
Right. And I agree.
I believe Marika started, because I was on the Historic Preservation Commission, and I was only on it for 1 year. She'd been assigned for 2 years. She started when I started. I believe that was in 2011.
Right, I think she's only served one term, and then we have this year, which is been kind of in limbo, so. And Oscar's the one I don't know. Oscar's the one that used to be part of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then the Historic Preservation Commission became its own commission, and he was involved with that, so it's Oscar actually that I'm more concerned about as far as the term. But I think we checked it out at the beginning of this calendar year, and he was eligible for 1 more term. But honestly, I have not checked, you know, recently. I did with Pavel.
Thank you.
What is the wishes of the commission, of council?
I'd like to move to approve these.
We have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second that. Want some further discussion? Because you're setting these up here, I think that maybe after the change in the ordinance concerning the length of term and the rotation, we probably should have this brought back to the council and approve those new dates for their expiration on the council, or on the commission. So, because you're gonna set them up differently, and so what we're approving today is with these term limits, and so I think we need to bring it back after you decide how you're going to set each person up.
Right, if the council approves longer terms, then the dates will change, right?
Okay. So, any further discussion? Not?
Councilmember Cutchin?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Juan?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go to the item D, Anciano's discussion of possible direction regarding Anciano's billing. And I thought it was important to put this on the agenda. We don't need this agenda item. I just thought that the county would come back with either a signed document accepting what we put out to them or not. And we just wanted to have a placeholder. Is that correct, Mr. Bells?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor, and I have a meeting tomorrow with the county manager, and we'll get further details from him. But it's my understanding he doesn't have that time, either in legal or administration, to get this before the county commission.
And just under this item too, we might as well, maybe during your discussion, I know that previously, last year, we had budgeted some money for Ancianos, and there was a problem in the way it would have been given over, and I don't know if you want to, because of the anti-donation, Mr. Caldwell advised us that we would have a pretty good significant finding if we did it that way. We weren't able to give that money, but now that the county has taken over Ancianos, I don't know if that request still exists, so you might have that conversation with them.
Mr. Mayor, the need to provide funding to the organization that is now phased out is no longer there. And I would not recommend that you provide that funding so that they could pay off debt to a closed organization. However, there is a request by Mike Trujillo, the new coordinator for the county of the Ancianos program, for $35,000. And I will have the finance director certify whether the funds exist and put it on the next agenda for your consideration.
Councilman Peralta?
Mr. Mayor, Jake, if you were saying that the funding that was going to the enhancement program was not proper, why, and then if all we're doing is switching to county, why would it be proper?
Mr. Mayor and
It's going to be used the same way, basically.
and Councilmember Peralta, what happened was, as in previous years, the money was set aside in the budget, but there was never a contract negotiated with Ancianos, and Ancianos came to us literally on the 11th hour of the fiscal year, saying, all right, we're ready to sign a contract. And the underlying basis for these contracts with these community service providers, like CAV or Ancianos, is that they're going to provide services that the town could otherwise be providing, and we're going to award them money for the provision of those services. But the Constitution is very clear and has been interpreted very clearly several times that we can't provide monies for services that have already been rendered. And we didn't have a contract. There was no way to justify the existence of a contract, particularly because there had been an administrative change, and we just couldn't go back in time like that.
Okay, so it wasn't the fact that there was anti-donation in the sense of if we had normally had a contract, it would be not a problem, but not having a contract in place and then trying to retro pay, you're correct, we can't do that. So that was the issue.
That's right.
So going forward and with the county issuing a contract at this time and going through the rest of the fiscal year showing services, you would be in line.
That's correct, and this being a transaction between government and governmental entities, a lot of the complications that existed in the past regarding anti-donation and procurement have become much simpler. But that's correct, Council.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the building, we're not talking about.
Well, that's why we originally put it on here, and we, in the previous meeting, go ahead, Rick.
No, I'm just saying, the agenda item is the building and not the
Right.
operational one.
Right, and again,
And I was just getting that for informational purposes, thank you.
Counselor?
So I know a month ago, Ancianos was short the $15K that the town was, did we get that to them somehow through Meals on Wheels, or, we said we were gonna do that, and did we?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Hahn, no, because of the reasons I just described.
So services weren't interrupted,
No.
but, then I presume we'll hear more about that later, I'm guessing?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I don't know if we'll hear more about it or not. It was a difficult moment. Ancianos brought upon itself, in my opinion, a lot of problems.
Yeah.
This being one of them, that it just couldn't recover from. The combination of those problems, of course, is what culminated in the need for this transition to the county in the first place.
Right, no argument there. I just recall at the 11th hour, they suddenly needed cash to keep services going somehow by hook or by crook. Could I ask you to switch hats and turn you into Commissioner Barrone for a second? And how did we end up finally resolving that? And I'm sorry, fellow councilors, that we got off track, but I thought I'd been told we were going to resolve it, and That's what I told the elders, and what was the final?
Basically, AAA kicked in additional funding along with the county to finish out the 1 month that they needed before the county took over. Basically, Ancianos is no longer.
Right.
It's a department of the county now, so.
So what are we calling Ancianos?
Still Ancianos, but it's a county department.
And AAA is the Meals on Wheels?
Well, AAA is the funding source. Okay. There's also another, I can't remember the acronym, but there's another portion within Ancianos that actually fund the teachers or the grandmothers, and that program is entirely not funded at this point. They haven't got the okay from the state. They actually put in a request for funding because Ancianos, before it became a county entity, failed to apply for the funding, or the funding was not allocated because of the condition that Ancianos was in to move forward in receiving that funding for that grandparenting allocation.
So where's that 15 grand?
The 15 grand is still
That we were gonna.
is still in our budget. It's still budgeted within the town of Taos.
Actually, any of the funds at the last day of the year that were unspent are returned to the general fund and then are reallocated under the budget for the coming year that you approved.
Makes sense, so it's gonna be reallocated, and Mr. Trujillo's asking for 35, I thought it was 30, but it's 35.
Well,
That's what he's asking
he's
for.
requesting.
Okay.
Councilor Gonzalez?
Mr. Mayor, I just ask in the future that, in speaking with some of the commissioners, they felt that they were left holding the ball with regards to, I understand it was final hour, but, it showed some disingenuity on our part, and I understand the reasons why, but I don't think they fully understand on that side, and issues like this is what will cause the pretentiousness between this council and their commission. So I just ask for future that, we either give them an outright answer of no, rather than them continually waiting to see when and where this is going to happen. Because I think, while they may have jumped the gun a little early in agreeing to fund, at the same point, it was expressed to me that they felt that we were on board with that process as well, especially being that it was our elders. So I just ask that, we move a little more cautiously in the future, and to not put a hindrance on those future relations, especially as you transition from coming off that commission into a full mayorship role, because there won't be that, tie of allegiance there, so to speak.
Yeah. And Jake did have that conversation with their county manager and their attorney, letting them know what was actually transpiring.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I believe that the councilman is absolutely correct that we probably should have not relied on the manager to relay that to the commissioners. But we did offer the $15,000, and we offered a couple of suggestions about how to do that government to government, and for them to use some funding they had in the program to participate with us instead. And they chose not to do that.
Council, that's the only last agenda item.
Can I have just a couple more minutes, Mr. Mayor?
Please.
The one thing I would like to, really push out there, and this is just a sentiment that's floating around this community, is that we are extremely uninformed of a lot of the decisions that are being made. So just moving forward in the future, I want to have, full purview, and I don't care if it means more inundation of time on my behalf or this council's behalf, but that we become extremely informed with the dealings of what's happening within the mayor's office and the manager's office. And I'm talking with regards to just the last couple of days having conversations with the commission and the manager with regards to the county courthouse lease and how they felt that this council hadn't been privy to any aspect of that lease and what it entailed. I know, again, we're in this spirit of collaboration, and it's going to be deals like this that cause those deals to be cut. So I asked that, that county courthouse needs to be brought to and before the council, as it's been expressed to me that they would still like it to be a public space building and not up for privatization. That's my feelings, and I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but that's the sentiment that's being shared across this community.
As far as having you more informed, is that right?
Yes.
I have the same sentiments that in many cases we're not getting the information prior to it being in the meetings. And like today, there's issues that come up, such as that grant from the state for the downtown district, that we weren't even aware that we were applying for that grant. And we should have had some prior information about why we were applying for it, and what it's going to be to the community, and it'd been nice to know that ahead of time. I mean, just I don't care if it's just an email saying, look, we're thinking of doing this, and this is why we're doing it, and that's fine. But not getting that kind of communication, and I think it's very important for us to be able to have that information so that we're not spending an awful lot of time discussing things that shouldn't have to have that long discussion. Just have to have that communication. Sure. And I need to bring up something now, and just for information purposes, but I understand that we have some RFPs that we want to send out, for example, on that communication tower at the town hall, and I'd just like to know where we're at on getting those things out to be publicized, what kind of timetable we're looking at.
We can probably have them ready for you for the Tuesday meeting, definitely for the regular meeting. There's been a backlog. We didn't have a procurement officer, and to get ready for the audit and to get ready for the year, close of the year, there was a backlog of invoices, contracts that she had to handle. She's new at the job. I would say it's the same thing in regards to the attorney's office. There have been a lot of contracts that had already expired when we got here, so we've had to deal with a lot of things last minute. I think the backlog's pretty much caught up. These job descriptions you approved today of the business manager, I think that's the only one left there. Personnel issues are all caught up. So we have 3 RFPs that we would like to get out. The one for the economic development money, the one for the community development money, and the third would be for the tower. And I believe we can have them very shortly. The town attorney has found models for each of those, which he has forwarded to procurement and asked them to put into the town format.
Thank you.
I have a comment and a concern as well, and I agree completely about being informed. It's just crucial. And I wanted to find out though where we're standing, because we had all agreed to do a month-to-month with Griffiths and Associates quite some time back, and I was wondering if the RP is ready to go on that.
The
Marketing for Griffith and Associates been on a 30-day, month-to-month.
Yeah, the plan that I presented at the time we approved the month-to-month was that we would approve the marketing manager. That manager would meet with the new LTAP board to put together an update for what we wanted for the advertising campaign, and that I had initially instructed, because the advertising tends to be in quarters, that Griffith could proceed through September 1st. There's a request today that came from the marketing committee meeting in Griffith that they would like to start planning for the winter campaign and move that back to December 31st. I think in the original guideline it was probably proposed that it was going to take that long for us to get that plan in place before we would go out to a new marketing firm. It's my personal opinion that if we get the right person for the marketing job, that we don't need Griffin and Associates. And to test that theory in the past 60 days, I have required that anything that came forward from any of our vendors had to go through my office first to be approved. And I honestly don't think, having reviewed and approved all of it, and rejected one or two, that there is that much work involved in it. She's not really doing development of the media materials for us, but I think we can do it all in-house. We may have a couple of subcontracts for layout and design or something like that. But again, it's very dependent on who we get to apply for this job and what their skill set is. So the quicker we get them in, I think the quicker I can bring back to you. And I'm hoping we'll have that decision within 30 days, that we can get somebody in before that. That they can come in and say to you, look, I don't need subcontractors, or I do need subcontractors.
Councilman Peralta?
Just in that regard, those 3 job descriptions that we approved, when will those hit the street?
Tomorrow. Or in the next hour.
And, go ahead, Councilman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for bringing up all these other issues. I know that as a new counselor, I'm on a pretty steep learning curve, and when I get the agenda and need to get a hold of the manager, or the attorney, or the mayor, or a fellow counselor, I'd just like to thank everyone for their quick responses. But in particular, I'd like to thank Mr. Bellis, because I have had the occasion to have to email him on a Sunday morning, and I get a response that afternoon. I've had occasions where I've had to call, and what I do is to clarify for the manager, this is urgent, or no rush to get back to me, or no need to respond, or please respond as you can. And the manager and the attorney and the mayor have done that, off hours. I feel communicating with our executive branch is on my shoulders. I need to put it out there. So just the other day, I was in the attorney's office, and he encouraged me to start setting up a weekly meeting with him. And the manager has done the same thing. And I'm remiss. I have not done that. I just come waltzing in there and hoping, into town hall and hoping to find folks. So the message I'm getting is, hey, we'd love to meet with you, Councilor Hahn. Set up an appointment, let's do it. But I haven't done that. I've called on the spur of the moment, and I have to say that the mayor, manager, the town attorney, and other staff with the town of Taos have always responded very quickly. So it's on me to reach out and set up these regularly scheduled appointments. It's on me to, when I get the agenda Friday afternoon, oftentimes late, so I feel very sorry for Renee and staff, because I know that they're working. But they've responded to me every time on the weekends, after hours, early in the morning, whenever I need it. What helps them, I think, is to put a caveat on it as to how urgent this is, or whether you even need a response. So I would offer that as a suggestion to my fellow counselors as a way to help facilitate communication. But I got to tell you, as busy as our town attorney, Jacob Caldwell, has been trying to get caught up, as busy and move forward, and as busy as Mr. Bellis has been with trying to get caught up and deal with some of the records of the past and continue to move forward. I've been thoroughly amazed and impressed with their ability to multitask. They must have been moms in a previous life, because I couldn't do it. So what helps me is to define how urgent the matter is in the next today. Please respond by the end of today, or the end of next week, or that kind of thing.
And Counselor, I appreciate that, because I don't underestimate that it's a tough job. I'm speaking to the instances where things have moved forward and taken place without any purview of the council, or without even any capability to ask a question. specifically the county courthouse lease, you know, coming to us after the fact that our manager had already been to the county commission. So it's in instances like that I'm saying I'd like to be informed with regards to multiple aspects, and it moves from that to letting go an employee, because the ramifications of that can be just as costly as not being informed about something that's been done, you know, elsewhere. So that's the instances that I'm talking. It's not so much that, you know, when I see the agenda a lot, if I have a question, I mean, I'm always on the phone with I know Jake with regards to certain issues. But you know, that's the instances I'm talking about, and that's the grumblings that, you know, it's been said that, you know, Horsefly knows more than you do, and I don't like being in that position to have to answer and justify why the media knows more than I do. So it's in those instances that I'm talking that, you know, just a little more transparency, a little more openness with anything that's going on. I mean, I answer emails all day long. And that's all it takes is a 2-second email to shoot over and say, hey, we have this coming up, call if you have any desire to know more.
Well, I guess the way I approached the courthouse was to go to the hearing. Because it is, after all, it's called the county courthouse. So that was perhaps my overly simplistic approach to that, was to do my homework, go and listen to the hearing. But I hear you, Councilman Gonzalez, but I'm also suggesting that we as a council, as has been pointed out to me in the past by members on this council, the quote was, Fritz, you gotta do your homework. So I've taken note of that critique and trying to do just that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I do understand what both councilmen are saying at the other end of the table here. And I will follow on that. I understand that you want to be informed that if we're moving on a policy issue or a potential policy issue, that you be informed early enough in the process and get input to it. And I appreciate that, and I will do that. It may be a breaking in period here of adjustment. At the county, it tended to be that the commissioners really wanted everything tied up with a bow before you brought it to them. And didn't really care much to be involved between the meetings. So I understand this is a different council, governing body, and will comply with your wishes. So I appreciate the input. I do want to, Councilman, state that I know all of you have been approached by at least 2 employees in regards to this I'm getting fired thing. I had a meeting with the management team yesterday. This is a community that runs on rumor. I had to put out a rumor, which I copied some of you on, that we were doing away with the bus to Ski Valley. I have no idea where that got started. But we've been pretty good at rumor control. There's a rumor out there that we were doing away with Fiestas, which I have no idea how that got started, because if anything, we put more resources into it this year than ever. And I thought we had a pretty good working relationship with Francisco and the committee, and the mayor and I met. Public Works met early on. We wanted to be very coordinated in that. And there are 2 employees that clearly have put it out there that they're being fired. I've made it very clear, I have no intention of firing anybody. I am happy with the team we have. We made the adjustments we intended to make. We're hiring some new employees. And I just wish if they were uncomfortable, they would come to me first. Now, if they're negotiating for a better salary or position, and they want to do that at the cost of rumor, I don't know that I feel obligated to have to reward that.
I think it's important that, as counselors pointed out to me, that meddling by the council with staff is totally inappropriate, that we must adhere to the chain of command. And so step 1 is acknowledge you've got a problem. Step 2 is go to your supervisor. Step 3 is go to the manager. Counseling, meddling, and I'm hoping this thing is not on. So did you all hear that? Oh, no, it's not. See if I kick the wires under the table this time. But anyway, the chain of command is what I was talking about, and it's really important that we adhere to that. And council needs to stay out of what has been pointed out to me early on, as we need to stay out of meddling.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, I agree. I mean, that's the first thing I'm telling you, that I'm not going to be employees in the middle. But one of the things that I would like to see is the information. It's information. Like when you agree with the Fiesta Council on what the program is going to be, it would be nice for us to know what that is, just simply because we can avoid those stupid rumors saying that you're not going to fund the council anymore. I mean, I got that from one of the Fiesta Council members saying, I heard that you're not going to fund the council anymore. I said, no, that's crazy. But I'm just saying is that it would help, because I think some cases they're not getting informed from their people what's going on either. And if we knew, what the agreement was, that we're going to put 15 police officers out on the street or whatever it is, it just helps us when we're trying to talk to people in the community that this is what's happening and where you can get support or where you can get help, because we have a little bit of information about what's happening. And that's the important aspect of what I'm talking about, is just kind of have that information in order for us to do what is asked of us, our constituency. Same thing you talked about with the airport, or you talked about with the naming of the park.
And Council, I appreciate what we're talking about here, because I think it's important that we all are informed, and that if we have questions, they get answered, so that, as we continue to move forward. There's a lot of rumor on the street too. They ask, we're gonna want you to step down, all this other stuff as commissioner, and there's a lot of rumor out there. And again, we want to be as informed as we possibly can, and not feed into the rumors, so that we have informed decisions of how we're moving forward within our community. And I'm glad that we had this conversation, because we know that Mr. Bellis has a little better direction of what is expected of him, because if somebody doesn't come to him and actually let him know if there's a little more expectation that is needed, now he knows. And instead of, running around saying he needs to do this, now he knows that he has some kind of direction. So, Mr. Bellis, I will expect that here shortly we'll start, maybe on a weekly basis, an email will go out, this is what I'm working on, this is what's coming forward, and we'll move forward through it, so that we don't have to have this conversation again until 4 years.
Well, Mr. Mayor, and I think one good aspect too is that we seriously revisit the workshop session with regards to the items that are coming up on the agenda. Just because when a special meeting lasts as long as a council meeting, or it should last as long as a council meeting, I think there's a lot of these issues that we can solve through in that workshop process without any actual approval or action. And I'm happy to sit in on those. It's just a little more bearing to actually have to move through the process in an action setting in a special meeting.
I'd second that, Councilman Gonzalez. I think that's a great idea. Could I switch topics just for a second?
Sure.
Here's a wild idea. I'm not an IT guy, but Renee, I can access this agenda and then highlight items and pull down budgets and stuff like that. This is just an insane idea. But I'm wondering if our IT guy, Mr. Cordova, can somehow jerry-rig that television screen up there. Don't you love this technical talk? So that as we're going through the agenda, perhaps someone from IT can actually highlight and pull down budgets or the job description or something like that, so that the public can actually see it. It's got to be awfully boring for them looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ugly faces and one beautiful face. I mean, so I'm kind of jealous of Councilwoman Camp too. Everybody's focused on her because of the beauty, but maybe we could spice it up, if that's possible to do, by just seeing that screen, or some kind of, they have them at the county. I don't know that they utilize them that well, but that way when we're talking about you know, the appointment of the Planning and Zoning Commission, they see it highlighted, and then they see who's being presented. And the people on TV, in the event that we lose voice and that can see as well. And I don't want us to have a big expense about this. If we're talking like a $50,000 setup, I vote no.
Well, I think that can be, you know, disseminated through Conrad, having him here during the council meetings to just PowerPoint that along with us as we're moving. I mean, it's on our agendas. And if he's here rather than just observing in the audience, have him actually, you know,
Well, if he has the time, but I've got a hunch he's probably out there putting wires together somewhere. But, you know, I just think it'd be cool for the audience to see what it is we're talking about, and actually to start to look at these budgets so that they can, you know, start to acclimate to this process. Thank you.
Councilman, Council
Mr.
comment.
Mayor, I just want to point out that that's readily available. This computer is hooked up to that projector, and I actually do that for the planning commission meetings because I agree, especially in those situations, that it's vital that the audience be able to see the zoning maps or the plans. I'm not necessarily volunteering to do it for these meetings because I'm meeting, but it certainly wouldn't be a problem to do. You just need the person to sit there and control it, and it's really not overly complicated.
I wonder if we could get a UNM intern, since we've got a nice juicy contract with them, to, no, not you, Francis, but maybe another intern to coordinate. I don't know, just a thought. Because the attorney can't do it.
Councilmember Han, though, you know, Conrad was here for most of the meetings.
I know.
Or Ruben's in the back for most of the meetings, so, I mean, not most of the end of the meeting, but they're around because sometimes we do need them, so it's not, wouldn't be difficult for them to post that stuff while they're here.
And readable, you know, when I've been in the audience looking at this thing, oftentimes the resolution on this is awful.
And Mr. Mayor, that could be,
That's
the problem is that when we do presentations up there, we turn off the lights, and it just depends on how long you're all going to talk, because you could start putting people to sleep that way.
I don't need a light.
Gentlemen, I'm gonna have to get going. I need to take my granddaughter's formula to her, and since we're at the end of this, I'd really like to make a motion to adjourn.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.